I've been trapped, played in my own game. Never thought I'd be caught up in this way. Yeah, it's real and it's more than just risky. You said that you miss me, couldn't look me in the eye when you kiss me. See, I know something is wrong, and I can feel that this love is gone. So now I gotta deal with the heartache. I gotta face what's real and I can't take all the pain that I feel cause it's killing me. When you say that you still wanna be with me, confused, that's not an excuse. You've been feeding me lies and I've got proof. Cause I'm feeling it right when I hug you, and now I'm bleeding inside cause I love you. Get tired. Never thought I'd be caught up in this weird. Yeah, it's real and it's more than just risky. You said that you miss me, couldn't look me in the eye when you kiss me. See, I know something is wrong, and I can feel that this love and it's gone. So now I gotta deal with the heartache. I gotta face what's real and I can't take all the pain that I feel cause it's killing me. When you say that you still wanna be with me, confused, that's not an excuse. You've been feeding me lies and I've got proof. Cause I'm feeling it right when I hug you, and then I'm bleeding inside cause I love you.
Hello, friends. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, to another episode of Warui Deshou. Welcome back for our Robo Chat, our mecha meeting of the minds. Yep, I got the alliteration. It came to me. I didn't have that before I started talking, and it came to me. This podcast is about SSSS Dynazenon. We're going to be talking about episodes 4 through 6. I'm the Subtle Doctor, and along for the ride with me, as always, to my left on screen is Shadon.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Got plays to discuss today, including Gama's, perennial enemy, the thing that he absolutely cannot overcome, no matter how hard he tries. And I am, of course, referring to the humble swimming pool.
The lifeguards. Like, incredible. Oh, man, that's going to be fun to talk about. And
I mean, a dried up desiccated mummy is definitely going to have struggle with water. I mean, it just makes sense, you know?
Yes, it's true.
It's his elemental weakness.
And with us once again, we're so pleased to welcome back to the show Trigger Superfan, host of Oh No Anime, and anime music aficionado. It is the inimitable Marc.
Hello. Thanks for having me back on, y'all. It's always a pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours, my friend. And we're
Indeed.
super, super happy to have you on. I realize as well that when I said Shadon was to my left, that doesn't work. What I should have just said was to the left, your left, viewer, and
right.
Marc is to your right.
It's fine. You're probably still pointing in the general direction of where I am relative to you on planet Earth anyway. That's going to be the excuse, and no one can disprove that.
Maybe you're right. But we got a lot to talk about today. How are we feeling about the show thus far? Let's before we get into the nitty gritty, let's have a little whip round and find out, like, let's take the temperature. What are we thinking about these episodes and the show so far? Shadon, why don't you start us off?
It's good, but it's not as good as Gridman at the same point in that show's run. That seems really horrible for me to say, because you'd think, like, well, you know, it's the similar formula. It's 3 years on, or however long it's been since Gridman. It's 3 years, 2018. But there's just something about Dynazenon that's not quite doing it for me as Gridman is doing. Because, just again, for full disclosure, people listening at home, I've been watching Gridman in parallel because I think it makes a lot of sense from a critical perspective to compare Dynazenon to Gridman. I mean, it's same creators, same kind of format. And you can then see, like, where things have gone better this time around versus where they're not quite as good. And on the whole, I still think Dynazenon is a really good show. I think, if anything, it's probably going to be one of the funniest shows I'll watch this year, which I was not expecting. Like, the comedy beats in Dynazenon are pitch perfect. To the point where I was making comparisons in my head between this show and, of all things, British sitcom Only Fools and Horses, which is quite the comparison, given the pedigree of that show. And, you know, the robot action's still great, and there's some very good character bits in here, don't get me wrong. But I just think there's certain ways in which the story has been set up that are selling Dynazenon as a show short, relative to what's happening in Gridman at the same point in time. That is by episode 6 of Gridman's run, which to me makes things feel very... I mean, one of my complaints I had last time has still not been really dealt with, which is, what are the stakes? I mean, I understand there's personal stakes in a lot of this, but, like, what's the wider, like, deal here, if you know what I mean? But overall, I'm still positive on it. It's still good. And they certainly cashed in the whole Gridman universe thing by the end of episode 6. I mean, we'll talk about that soon enough. Although I would also make an argument that there's perhaps a potential downside to the idea of the Gridman universe, but I will again discuss that later when we get to talking about it. But overall, positive, but it's just not quite as good as Gridman at the moment. But it's still good.
How about you, Marc? How are you feeling about the Dynazenon?
Yeah, I agree with Shadon. I think it has definitely been a slower burn than Gridman was. I don't really know if that's purposeful, if it's just you know, maybe the strength of the writing is not as much there, if the characters are not connecting as much. But yeah, I find myself more now that I've seen Gridman. I saw Gridman when it aired, and you know, the thing that was compelling me week to week with that show is pretty different than this, because with this, most of the things that seem to be compelling me week to week, and it's almost like the show is kind of goading me on with that, is like what is going to be revealed this week about, like, what's going on. Because these last 3 episodes that we're going to be talking about today have all ended on, like, a type of cliffhanger. And I know that that's TV anime in a lot of ways. But these last 3 episodes have been pretty purposeful. But yeah, the end of episode 6 kind of completely changed things for me because, to be honest with you, I wasn't really expecting a direct through line into the original Gridman anime. Certainly was not expecting the particular through line that they put in there, which we'll talk about. And that definitely had me like pumping a fist and being like, what? Because I thought this was without spoiling anything for our discussion ahead, I thought this was going to be a mecha show, but this is actually an everything show. Turns out.
Oh boy,
this is actually them doing all of it at once.
Was anti your expectations, you might say.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely made me excited. It definitely made me excited and made me happy to see, we've had it like we talked about on the last time we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We've had a direct through line to the original Gridman Tokusatsu series. So, I in a way that's kind of been what this show has been about, is sort of connecting all these disparate elements. So I guess I probably should have expected there at some point to be some sort of direct connection to the Gridman anime. But the way that they did it, I was not expecting it because it was quite literally out of nowhere. So I'm excited to talk about it because episode 6 is definitely the one that I felt a bit of a quickening happening there. And I have like twice as many notes on that particular episode than both of the ones previous. So like I said, until I watched episode 6, I think I watched it yesterday for the first time. And I was like, I genuinely was like, I don't know how much I'm gonna say tomorrow until I watched that episode. I was like, okay, here we go. Here we go. It's like, like we're finally getting into it. So yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, that episode like somehow manages to make the phrase anticlimactic into, a self-contradiction.
Yeah, nice.
Exactly.
Good. Very good. Yeah, I think we were all like rubbing our hands together gleefully when that happened. When they dropped that on us, very literally.
I am, but only because I hypothesized a hilarious comedy like bait and switch. Which I suppose, should we spoil it now just for the fun of it? Because we
don't have to keep, we can presume that.
If everybody watching this, if you don't want to be spoiled, of course, this is not.
We're literally jumping the gun to the very last possible chronological thing we could be talking about. But it is also the biggest thing that's happened in these past 3 episodes. So
Anti from Gridman or Anti, however you pronounce
it. Gridnight.
Gridnight.
Specifically his giant hero form. He shows up. That's the last thing that we see.
And that's all we see, and all I can think to myself is he's just appeared to say, where the fuck is Gridman? I want to kill that son of a bitch.
I know.
And then everyone goes, and he's not here. And he's like, oh, damn it, he just leaves.
Yeah, right. The next episode, he just leaves, and nothing more is ever said about it.
He's just gone.
That'd be great, but it would also suck. It would be great in the moment.
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, the obvious reason why that they're introducing Gridnight and Anti at this stage is because I do feel like the one thing with Gridman that they did that they never really followed through on for me, and could have probably possibly done it because they were already planning on making this show, was like the entire niche of like what exactly kaiju were, like where they came from, how they fit into this like weird computer world that everybody's living in. There was the episode in the original Gridman where, and I can't remember the main character's name. Shadon, you might be able to help me out with this because you're watching it right now. But
Hibiki.
So one more time.
Hibiki.
Hibiki gets like he has that weird episode where he gets on the train with the weird like green-haired frog-looking kaiju girl, and she's gives him a bunch of really weird like kind of sort of esoteric hints as to like what exactly the nature of this world that they're living in is.
The Cheshire Cat to his Alice in Wonderland.
Exactly. She's kind of giving him his first like almost kind of awakening of like starting to realize that like the world that they're all living in is probably not, it's not the real world, clearly. I mean, obviously we had hints, and I think by that point everybody already knew.
What if
But
I
yeah, basically his Morpheus sitting in a old leather chair in a white room moment.
Speaking of which, actually, if I may just interrupt very briefly about that, I know
go
we're
ahead.
meant to talk about Dynazenon here, but this is the beauty of rewatching Gridman now that I know more about it. They have like a piano version of the Gridman 1993 television series OP playing during that train scene. Something I never would have picked up when I first watched it. And I'm rewatching it, I'm like, you sons of bitches. Well played. Well played, my good sir.
And that is the wonder of having a full relationship with Subaraya and being able to use basically anything you want from the original show. Thank God for that.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think that Dynazenon is definitely going to be, at least from my perspective at this point, them having introduced Grid Knight and connected these two universes. Dynazenon is clearly seeking to explain, like, the nature of kaiju and whatever that sort of capitalizing on that whole thing, which I just frankly think that they didn't have enough time to fully flesh out in the original show. And obviously the nature of kaiju between these two different universes, between Gridman and Dynazenon, are two different things because, we see their creation process almost in full in the first show or in the first anime. Whereas this is very, we get some hints at it. I think Suzumu says that they're born from people's will,
Right?
But that's a very anime way of talking about where they come from. So, yeah.
I mean, I think I thought it was a little more concrete than that about it. Although, I mean, not super concrete ultimately. I mean, it's still abstract. But I don't know. I mean, unless I'm super duper wrong, which I'm known to be. There's going to be, the explanation is going to be more metaphysical than scientific. Read the kaiju. So,
yeah, I mean, clearly that's where they're pointing already.
I mean, it's
sort of like
it's an
emotional
anime mecha
manifestation.
show. Since forever, those things love to get metaphysical, and I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
anime just loves to talk about like collective emotion and like people's will all the time. I mean, that might born from people's will might be the most commonly uttered phrase in all of anime.
God, they're just obsessed with the Schopenhauer and what have you. But okay, so first, before I give my brief thoughts, just want to quickly say hi, Gogo Catherine, and I don't know why I pronounced her name like Catherine, but I did. Hi, Catherine, and Yukinon in chat.
Is she an X-Men character?
Apparently, Catherine. Hi, Kate, Yukinon, and Gogo. Expect a few others to pop in, and thanks for coming to hang out. How do I feel about the episode, or rather the episodes? So because my memory is absolute garbage, I have not been thinking about the show in direct relationship to Gridman the way that you have, Shadon. Just because I haven't been watching it in parallel, so and like I said, I just don't remember enough about Gridman to compare the two. So apart from broad connections, I'm kind of watching this on its own, which is not, I'm not saying that there's a better or worse way to watch it. It's just this is my experience of it.
Should absolutely be a standalone product though as well.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't particularly feel lost. I did have to Google when the character showed up at the end. I'm like, oh man, it's who? Who is that? But
I definitely had to remember what his hero name was. I was like, it's Grid something. I don't
Gritty McGridster.
Gridbard.
Yukinon is not sure that Grid Knight is anti. He asked in chat, why is everyone so sure Grid Knight is anti?
Because it'd be lame if it wasn't.
Sure. Oh, well, yeah, we're going off the original show. I suppose what he means is this could be a different Grid Knight or something like that. But I mean, we'll of course we'll see. But that would be.
I think it's pretty safe to assume, unless the show tells us otherwise, that's probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's it would be a little bit of a missed opportunity, in my opinion, if it
I mean,
wasn't answered.
this show is part of the Gridman universe, as they call it. So to have the second its entry in that universe be something where it actually, does a red herring of who this person is, like, oh, you think it's Grid Knight, but it's not. Like, that would be disingenuous, I think. Like, and I don't think it'd be doing that in a way where it's trying to be clever. I think that would just be a bit of a botch job, to be honest. Like, it's drawn explicit attention to the fact that this is in continuity of a sort with Gridman, the show. So to have it then turn out, oh no, actually it's not Anti, I'm like, well, okay,
It
thanks.
also makes too much sense because Anti is the first like human related kaiju, like kind of the first like kaiju you can talk to in the universe. So it makes too much sense for him to.
Yeah, and it would then tie into what they're talking about with kaiju being involved with people's wills, kaiju being involved with emotion and all that. I mean, that was something developed in Gridman, so it would be perfect to continue having him in this show as a way of furthering that idea, that theme, that conflict.
Yeah. But steering the show back to, or the conversation back to me and my opinions, which, let's be real, I mean, that's the most important thing.
It is.
What did I? Yes. It said, "Have you read our iTunes description lately? You should look at that. It's the fine print on the contract, buddy." No. Just to round out the segment so we can move on. Like Yukinon says in chat that he thinks the show is just as good as Gridman with different strengths. I don't know if I'm, because I really, really love Gridman. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so it's hard for me to compare the two, as I said. But like, I'm actually really, really liking this show an awful lot. It feels, at least from what I remember of Gridman, it feels lighter in tone. But I don't mind that. I mean, I like that. I am kind of okay with the show up to this point, kind of obfuscating the stakes, like Shadon said, and like just kind of there's a general sense sometimes when I'm watching the show that I'm not really sure why things are happening, but that's okay. Like I'm just kind of along for the ride, going down the lazy river, so to speak, that this show takes you on in some ways, and like And I am still confident that they're going to get around to kind of directly confronting the questions that some of the questions, at least, that you guys raised about the stakes specifically in terms of, like, I don't know, cosmically speaking or social politically or whatever, apart from like the personal stuff, and also like fleshing out the relationship with Gridman and kind of like the ontology and metaphysics of like the world, being in a computer. Like I am optimistic that we'll get at least something in that regard. But like, I think that what we've got to talk about this week is a lot of really good character stuff. Like, I was pretty cold after the first 3 episodes on the cast by and large, and I'm much more warmed up to them, Kaiju Eugenicists included. I really, really like a lot of them. I like what we've seen. The names like are totally gonna escape me, so you guys will have to help me. But like, I think the female lead,
Minami.
Yeah, Minami.
Yeah.
Like I feel a lot more invested in her. I feel way more invested in Koyomi and Chise than before. And we've gotten like little tidbits of kind of the like the personal mysteries, and I really like that. Like, what happened between Koyomi and his once beloved, who is now married to a buff man called Arata.
You mean Tony Stark?
Yes, exactly. She's now married to Iron Man, the anime Pepper Potts.
He looks way too fucking much like Tony Stark. That's the thing, though. It's just, but I rewatched it. I was like, I like it. It was Robert Downey Jr.'s voice making quips in my head, and I'm like, oh god, no wonder he finds him so annoying.
And the mystery of Minami's sister is very intriguing, and
oh boy,
I don't know, like the personal lives. I mean, even Yomo Guilty, as he's called, like he's growing on me too. So, and of course, Galma, hilarious, funny man, and And there's some running gags, and like I said, even the eugenicists are getting kind of
Literal
their
running
time.
gags.
Yeah, they're right. They're very good. They're getting their time to shine. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the character moments, kind of punctuated by cool transformation sequences and fun, if brief, giant robo fightans. I'm into it, so I'm positive on it. But what?
well, this one is about the people.
Exactly.
A big change.
This is a big change for the genre.
Yeah, it's about
God
the
damn it.
characters. For once.
Oh, Marcus.
Finally.
Oh boy.
Finally. But for people like me who do have bad memories, Shadon is going to help us by catching us up, by summarizing for posterity here the episodes that we are talking about. And oh boy, that's far too big on the screen. Okay, that's a more manageable size. All right. I've got the stopwatch up. Shadon has 2 minutes to summarize episodes 4 through 6. It feels like this one is less difficult than week 1's, but we'll see. We'll see how he does. Are you ready, Shadon?
I'll try, because I feel like the problem is I'm going to end up glossing over certain salient points, but I'll give it a go. I'll give it a try.
Okay.
You know?
Follow along at home, ladies and gentlemen. Stopwatch is up. Shadon will begin in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so Yomogi gets a cold in episode 4, and that's really all you need to know. Plus, along with the fact that he starts to develop a crush on Minami, he's, getting more involved with her and all that stuff. We also learn the amazing running gag, the fact that Minami seems to take the Dino Wing to and from school, which is great. That's one of the best jokes in the show, in my opinion. But anyway, yes, gets a cold, has to fight. But we also learn that Chisei can actually pilot Dino Soldier as well. She has the ability also, so that very, very relevant later. Anyway, enough of that. Episode 5, it's a parallel of the Gridman water, beach episode, except it's in a water park. There are scenes between Shizumu and Yomogi and Minami at various points where they start to mingle and get, hang out. Gauma does not understand local pool rules. He does not understand safety, and he is just an absolute menace to himself more than he is to Shizumu, which is just amazing. There are, of course, more discussions about, what it means for kaiju, to exist in the world, all that sort of stuff. Episode 6, just breezing through it.
Yeah.
So episode 6 is when things start to fall the F apart, because Kaomi, in all of these episodes, has been dealing with meeting an older high school flame of his who is now married, and he has no idea how to deal with that. How do I handle the fact she wants to associate with me even though we weren't not a thing anymore? I don't get it. Her husband shows up. We have a scene in which he feels completely dislocated from, them and just feels completely out of whack. He's depressed by it. He ends up meeting with Mujika, who is one of the eugenicists, who doesn't intend to steal Dino Striker from him, but actually does at the end, just opportunistically, which I think is a key thing to note. And then they end up getting it back. Galma nearly blows them all up, but they all get away. But between all this, of course, we've learned that Minami's sister is actually dead due to suicide. And then eventually they all fail because all their weights of the world crash on them. And then Gridman shows up.
1. You did it. You did it. Very good.
Barely.
There
There's actually more than I thought there, and also things I just almost forgot. But yeah, key points are we learned that Minami's sister died from suicide, and possibly
it's a rumor.
At this point, it's still possibly, but I mean, that's Chekhov's gun.
I'm just gonna say this though. I mean, I really enjoyed Wonder Egg Priority, and I know you did too, Doc. And so we go on to Dynazenon, and we think to ourselves, something not quite so heavy, not quite the, overly weighty subject matter that we've been dealing with in the earlier part of it. Oh, son of a bitch!
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's happening again. And if you think of being you're just linking together the fact there's suicide in one show and suicide here, I need to also note that Minami's arc of trying to piece together her sister's history here and find out what went wrong parallels Koito's almost to a T.
I mean, and it's
to the point where,
it's a high school girl, and there's bullying involved. I mean, there's many parallels.
Yeah, to the point where that's actually a salient point that I'll be bringing up later in terms of comparison. Not an unfavorable one, I should stress, but just to show like how there are differences and one can execute on this topic. But still, yeah, that's a thing. So great. God, we try and dodge this subject, don't we? And if you think that's bad, just wait until you see what happens in Vivi.
Oh man, I haven't been watching. Oh fuck.
No, it hasn't happened yet.
Great.
But yeah, that's the topic that comes up in Vivi as well. So I mean, we'll do it in bottom tier Tomazaki next, and at that point, I'm just deciding, right, great, that's it. Thanks, anime.
No. If it rears its head in that show, then then we are in a simulation.
Unfortunately, another somewhat common trope in anime about high school: suicide. Especially if you're trying to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, to not so smoothly transition from that to creating things, giving life to works of art.
I see where you did that.
Yes. So
I create life, as Eddie Redmayne once said. And so do these people.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to briefly touch on a few of the folks working diligently on Dynazenon. We last time, of course, talked about the director, talked about the script writer. So this week we're going to talk about a couple of the new episode directors. We do not have to talk about the director of 6 because that is Yoshiyuki Kaneko, who we spoke about last time. He directed episode 1.
Oh, I do have more hot off the press info about the kaiju designers for the last 3 episodes.
Ooh, hit me.
That's the one thing I managed to pull up. We'll do it when we get to it. I don't want to put that right in the front, but
okay. Well,
they're further down the cast roll.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
The staff roll.
Gotcha. So let's talk about briefly the director of episode 4, Tatsumi Fuji. And Fuji appears to have a lot of experience with key animation on shows like he's done a couple of things for Inazuma 11, directed and storyboarded an episode of The Great Passage, Trigger experience, worked on Brand New Animal, did key animation and direction for an episode of that, and also did some digital retouch for a handful of episodes. Got some ye old Gynax experience here with Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. Directed a few episodes of that and did some key animation on it. Worked on Premiere as an animator. And also, because it's back in the news, I feel like I should mention Puella Magi Madoka Magica, the movie Part 3, Rebellion. Key animation there. Also, Gridman. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, funny, directed and storyboarded episode 4 of Dynazenon, but also of Gridman. So if you'd like a 4th episode of your anime directed and storyboarded, contact Tatsumi Fuji.
I mean, they're really going, because there are some visual parallels between, and when I say parallels, I mean it's literally the same framing. The shots are almost identical, save with the Dynazenon characters. But I literally do not think they were going so far as to say, hey, dude, you did that one specific episode of that show. Would you like to do this one specific episode in parallel of this new show that otherwise is broadly similar? And he was like, sure. I'll Control C and Control V that. Why the fuck not? And that's not a criticism, by the way. That's actually a good thing.
Continuity. It's a good thing if you can get it. Hideyuki Satake is the director for episode 5 of this show. Did a little bit of key animating on a certain obscure season of anime that Marc and I have talked about before, called Mob Psycho 100 Season 2. And
that show's all right.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's okay.
Haven't seen it in a while. I don't know if it holds up.
I don't know.
Let's see. Oh, here's a show that I wanted to see, but I haven't gotten around to seeing. Satake directed 3 episodes of Dragon Pilot, Hisone and Masatan, and was the animation director for a couple of different episodes. So worked a lot on that. Have either of you
It's a
seen
weird
that?
show.
I think it's on Netflix.
I have
but-
seen it.
Nope.
It is strange.
Shh.
Okay.
Did not like it as much as I thought I would. A lot of weird vor stuff happening in that show.
Well, not what I expected you to say.
When you put it like that.
Let me just say that in order to fly the dragons and become the titular dragon pilot, you have to be eaten by the dragon and then like sit in its stomach. And it is very lovingly depicted.
That's not bad. You could fairy tale that. That's okay.
Some maybe too lovingly.
Okay.
Let's just say.
Okay.
I
fair
wasn't
enough.
expecting the nature documentary angle from that. That's
People did like that show. I was expecting it to be a very different show than it was. I was there for the fighter plane angle, and that is not what that show is about. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
Speaking of shows that defied expectations and weirded people out, Ninja Slayer from animation is on here. Key animation for a couple of the
I just
later
want to say
episodes.
that show maybe shouldn't have defied any expectation.
Okay, it's fair.
I think that show maybe just unfortunately people had wrong expectations because it was right after Kill la Kill.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do
I do
it.
want to say that he was the animation director and he animated on episode 5 of Recreators, which is a fucking fantastic show that absolutely nobody has watched, and yet everybody should watch, especially if you have an Amazon Prime subscription.
Yeah, that was an anime strike one, wasn't it? Back when that was going on, but
oh god,
that actually might have been pre-anime strike, just when they were licensing exclusives and didn't have a dedicated service. That was what I remember. Maybe one of the first Amazon Prime exclusives.
So we know the first one, the much beloved Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress.
Yes,
that was number one. That was pre-anime strike.
That might have been the second one. I want to say there's maybe one before that one that absolutely nobody watched. Because
Well, you're thinking of
exclusive and not
Battery.
advertised.
You're thinking of Battery, the baseball
Yes.
show, which was
I am
that came
thinking
out
of
at the
Battery.
same time as, or at least it aired
Okay,
over here
alright.
the same time as Cabaneri.
Cabaneri.
But yeah, nobody watched Battery.
If in spirit, if not literally. But yeah, Recreators is a fantastic show. Maybe one of the most meta industry commentative shows ever, but it does not do it in an annoying way at all. It's fantastically produced.
I don't know why I fell off it. I've seen like the first quarter of it, like 6 or 7 episodes, and I really liked it.
You have to be a certain type of person to really enjoy that show, but the characters are phenomenal, all phenomenal. The story is like breakneck, even though it's a 26 episode series. There's just like so much happening. And it's got a Hiroyuki Sawano soundtrack. So if you're into that type of stuff, the soundtrack is fantastic and really, like any Sawano soundtrack, really adds. So yeah, it's good. Watch it. Don't sleep on it.
Who's written and directed by the by the director of All Noah Zero. That show.
And let me just say, it's a lot better than All of Noah Zero.
The artists improve over time. We don't.
Yeah.
We need
Is
to
that one of
remember
the shows
this.
where the name is also an example of truth in advertising? Because it's got
Yeah,
zero.
well,
Hey.
I think Creators has the distinct advantage of being written by multiple people, which is pretty uncommon for anime, and also at least the series composition is more than one person,
Yeah,
and
it
also is not written by To Ubukata, who is has written some stuff that I like despite him. And that's yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike. You said despite him with such venom.
Oh, it's good.
He's by all accounts not only not a good writer but not a good man. He was in court a couple of years ago for laying hands on his wife, and nothing ever came of it. But you don't end up in court for spousal abuse for no reason usually. So
If only he'd been doing weed, then he would have been, duly punished.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, Japanese
Yeah.
justice system jokes. Woo!
Yeah.
Sorry, get out there.
Yeah, if only he was Pierre Taki, he would have had his entire career destroyed for getting a little bit of that booger sugar going.
No. Well,
I will say they have
I'm
put all
resisting
of his
urge
music
time.
back on Spotify since then, though. So thankfully, we can at least still express our love for Danky Groove, creators of the Devilman Crybaby opening song.
The greatest song
Anyway.
in the history of mankind.
Exactly.
Well, other notables from the resume of Hideyuki Satake did quite a bit of work on a show near and dear to your heart, Shadon, and mine, Orange.
Nice.
Did like
Another show about suicide.
I know.
A classic.
But
Entry
an excellent
into the suicide genre.
Can't laugh, but it is an excellent show. It's a show I love a lot. Satake did like a ton of like the animating, like animation director, assistant animation director, assistant episode director, in betweening key animation, like played those duties in 3 or 4 different episodes. Gonna shout out Shirobako for Yuki's sake. Key animation for I'll just read in parentheses. I don't know what this means. It says B Loop episodes 16 and 19.
I think it means because he was animating at a different
studio. I see. Got it. Okay. Yeah. And that's in a couple different parentheticals. So that makes sense. And then as far as Gridman, worked on the 10th episode primarily as storyboarder, episode director. Did some key animation for it. But worked on a couple of other episodes here and there in a supervisory role. But lastly, I'm going to talk about, this will be very brief because her resume is very short. I don't know if she's just new to voice acting or just new to the anime business of voice acting, but Shion Wakayama, I wanted to shout out for her role as Minami in Dynazenon, because I think her performance has been notable to me. Like, it's been, she's kind of subdued, not a lot of hot-blooded yelling or super emotional scenes as of yet. I'm very curious if this role will require that of Wakayama down the line, but so far it's been very reserved character. But it's been a performance that I have liked a lot. And she's also been in, like I said, short resume, but we've got Dr. Stone. She's Azura in Dr. Stone. She is in a show called Cookin' Idol I My Main as Kinako. In a movie called Her Blue Sky as Aoi. I can't pronounce that. So first name Aoi. Aoi. Thank you. And then Gundam Build Divers, both seasons of that as Hinata Mukai. And is in the Kramer show that's airing right now. The Farewell, My Dear Kramer. That's a sports show, I think.
It's a soccer show, and Kramer is a reference to
Seinfeld.
Kramer's the last name is no.
Cosmo.
Thankfully, it's spelled differently.
Yeah.
Kramer is reference. I looked this up because I was like, who the hell is Kramer? Kramer is, I believe, a German guy who is often considered the father of women's soccer in Japan.
Oh, that's cool.
I guess somebody brought him in at some point in maybe the 60s or 70s or maybe even 80s. And essentially is responsible for like kickstarting the love of Japanese or the love of soccer in women's soccer in Japan. So
Kickstart.
That is why the show it's a real Bend It Like Beckham scenario.
Oh, very good. Good. Yeah. But Wakayama plays Sawa Echizen in that role. And in the movie, there appears to be a related movie to Farewell, My Dear Kramer.
I believe that there was a movie before the TV anime.
Oh, cool. Okay, excellent.
From what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And now I'll turn it over to Marc to talk about kaiju design.
Oh, yeah. So there's one person, Yoshiyuki Kaneko, that we talked about last time, who is a kaiju designer. And I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I would have said this last time, but it bears reiteration because so he designed the kaiju in episode 6, the like centaur kaiju.
Yeah,
it's a very unique design.
It's a cool design.
I almost want to say that I glossed over this last time, but he's actually the designer of Biollante.
Whoa!
Whoa.
Yeah,
Even I
he
know
designed
that.
it. He designed it with 2 other people, but he is credited. That is like one of his first credits is designing Biollante.
By the way, if you all just very briefly, you all should go watch Godzilla versus Biollante. Like, it's just a trip, man. It's a wild movie. It is hilarious and fantastic and weird and cool. It is an excellent movie.
Yeah, and that's a big credit
Mhm.
because Biollante is probably one of the most beloved of Godzilla's more modern enemies. So he designed the Centaur kaiju and also the episode 1, the whichever one that was. Yeah,
They're
we got
both
some
kind
big
of
names
they're
this
both
week.
kind of Saurian. Like the first one
Yeah.
and then this one both have a
There's a
Saurian
lot
type
of
feel.
Yeah, there's a lot of lizard based
Yes,
kaiju happening in
exactly.
this.
Yeah.
On episode 5, we actually had Kiyotaka Taguchi, who is a pretty well-known Ultraman director, and I guess designer as well. Probably started as a designer and moved up to director.
Sure.
But he directed Ultraman X, Ultraman Orb, and Ultraman Z.
Oh,
Was like the main director.
Love
of those.
Ultraman Orb. Ultraman Orb
Yeah.
rules so much.
Yeah, so he designed the episode 5 kaiju, and then he's also directed some Sentai stuff, but yeah, he's mostly an Ultraman director. And then for episode, I just realized I did this in reverse order. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. Hold on.
All right,
Sorry,
well,
guys.
while you stall for time,
I have like 50,
this is Ultraman Orb.
I have like 50 different ones.
This is
There you
Ultraman Orb in his like first. For he has, of course, as in any Ultraman show, there are many iterations and like different depending on the materials he uses to like fuse and create his like which Ultraman he draws powers from. Like he can look different and have different powers, but this is his like base form. It's cool. So this is Guy as Ultraman, and his nemesis in Ultraman Orb is, I wish I knew the actor's name that played the part because he is a fantastic villain. But this is Jugless Juggler, who's like was once an Ultraman on the side of light, but fell because he was jealous of Guy. And other reasons that I haven't seen the prequel series, so I don't know the whole entire story, but it's alluded to in the first season. But he's like, goes bad and becomes a villain and does bad things, but eventually comes around at the end of the TV show. Spoilers, and helps the good, because he's such a beloved character. He's the Vegeta of the show. Comes around and begrudgingly sides with the light again to help save the day.
So Doc, when are we getting the like spin-off podcast, which is just you doing the voices of these two
Where
talking
I just like
about
fight
Ultraman?
with them.
No, they just talk about Ultraman. Like, you just pretend like, I thought that fight scene was pretty good, especially when you punch me in the face. Like, you'd be like that, pretend the characters.
Exactly. That's coming soon. We got to make a new Patreon tier for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. Corrections I have to issue.
No
I
worries.
was looking at 2 different ANN pages, and I still had some of the directors' pages up. Shinji Nishikawa is the Biollante director, and
Okay.
he designed the episode 1 kaiju and episode 4 kaiju.
Okay.
Then the Ultraman guy, that's all fine. That was episode 5. Episode 6 was designed by Hideo Okamoto. And Hideo Okamoto is a Godzilla kaiju designer who's also worked on Ronin Warriors and Pokemon Black and White. And he in the Godzilla universe exactly. Well, what are Pokemon but small kaiju?
Just samurai troopers.
Until we get to the big size Pokemon, then they're just regular kaiju at that
They're
point.
just regular kaiju. But in the Godzilla universe, he is responsible for designing the kaiju Batra and Destroyer. So
Batra rules. Batra rules. I'm a Batra stan.
Heisei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Destroyer definitely. Destroya is like in the last Heisei movie responsible for the demise of a beloved character. And then
Destroying them, you might say.
yes, exactly. And Batra is the like shitty, like punk kid brother of Mothra, basically. Shows up and like tries to fight Godzilla for a while but gets scragged. And I love him. I love him so much. He's great.
There you go. All right, so there's our three. I apologize for screwing up the names there, but that's what happens when you have 16 different tabs open at once.
I know that feeling. Okay, so thank you very much for your assist there, though, Mark. That's super information. And now that we have all the names straight, no, that's great. That's great stuff. So we're going to do Patron questions next. But before that, some of you might be wondering, Patron questions? What is a patron? How can I become one? Well, if you head over to patreon.com/WateryDeshow, you can support the show financially. We have 3 budget-friendly tiers, $2, $3, and $5 monthly. So no matter how much content we produce in a given month, and right now it's a decent bit of it, you get all of it for what you pay for. And you get a lot. Like there's a lot of pretty cool benefits, I think, and perks and rewards. We have a fantastic Discord community that you could be part of. We have on Discord like watch-alongs, game nights, group watches of films, all sorts of different things. Some organized by us, some organized by the patrons themselves. When Shadon and I are too busy living our 3D IRL lives.
You mean when I'm too drunk?
Or that. We make extra content in the form of like anime talks, video game playthroughs, and discussions, all sorts of fun stuff that you could have access to over at patreon.com/WateryDeshow. We would appreciate your support, as always. And of course, you do not have to do that. You are loved and valid, and we appreciate you just hanging out and having fun. If you just don't want to or are not able to support us, we still feel the love. So now, Shadon, if you will do us a solid and open up the patron questions, we can answer all the inquisitive queries. That's a terrible sentence that I was saying. We can answer the patron questions. Give us the questions.
Yeah. I'll answer the inquisitive queries of an inquiring nature.
Thank you.
Yes, I will. All right, so first batch of questions comes from bottom tier pirate Rackham, also known as Rackham Extreme, or just Rackham, or Rack to his friends. You know,
son of Rackham. Rackham's my father. Right.
It's a junior senior situation,
yes.
I think.
Yes.
Anyway, first question is this: the show so far seems to have possibly linked different kaiju eugenicists to different members of Team Dynazenon, which is a great team name, by the way, because I mean, Dynazenon is just a great name.
It's a good word.
What else are you gonna? It's a good word. In the way they have approached or talked to them outside of battle. So, example, you've got Mujina and Kaiomi, as we saw in episode 6. We have Suzumu and Yume, as we saw, I think it was in episode 5 and 4 as well, to an extent. And then we've got Juga, and Juga being, of course, the guy who constantly gets murdered by debris, which is great.
Yeah.
And Yomogi. Do you think there may be some significance to this which is yet to be revealed, or do you think it is merely a way the show has been framing the story thus far? My knee-jerk reaction or answer to this is I actually don't want there to be any significance to it. I want it to be a framing thing, because I think that if it turned out there was some sort of link between these pairings in a way that's not to do with just their relative perspectives on life, like how they either oppose or align together, such as with Mujina and Kaiomi, I think it would cheapen those in a way if it turned out there was some wider force that was bringing them together as these pairs. I would prefer it to be the case that it's a framework that they operate in. It's a narrative thing, but it's not something that's got a in-universe explanation for why it's you're similar because you're from a parallel dimension or some crap like that. No, I don't want that. I think it would make more sense and be more engaging for the stories just being organic. We just have these commonalities or divergences.
How about you, Mark? What say you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that we really have enough information to say either way whether or not there's something more significant. I will just say that I have been enjoying it. I think it's a really interesting way of approaching, the hero villain dynamic, and humanizes the villains in a way to where there kind of just doesn't really seem to be like a whole lot of like good and evil type stuff playing off, because everybody just seems just kind of like normal people. I mean, obviously the kaiju eugenicists are a little, they're a little strange. They wear weird clothes and have kind of muted personalities, or except for what's his name, the dude with the red hair. Mujina is the only one I can remember.
Yeah.
Abichuga.
Yeah, Juga. There you go. He's the only one that doesn't seem to just have like a pretty like, muted, semi-nuanced personality. But yeah, it's been interesting, and I have been really, I think has been a really good thing no matter what ends up coming of it, because it's a really interesting dynamic to where like to have the heroes and villains like knowingly kind of like not really giving a shit and like hanging out with one another, and then immediately going and having a giant robot versus kaiju fight, and then just kind of being like, all right, well, that's just kind of how it is. Like at the end of it,
Back to the water park.
Pretty funny.
It's how all domestic disagreements should be solved, in my opinion. Like, you want to decide who's going to do, like, the dishes, you should have a massive robot kaiju fight.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, and I this is in my notes for episode 6, but I also really like the idea that both of these groups seem to be having like the one main argument they seem to be having as to like how to solve these problems is like, do we play the game as we have been playing it, or do we just kill the other team? Like, like Juga is constantly just saying like, why don't we just go like kill them right now?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else is just like somewhere between like, and like, nah, let's just like keep doing what we're doing. And the same thing with Dynazenon, like, the entire crux of Galma's actions in episode 5 is like trying to either beat the shit out of and or kill Shizumu at the water park, and the rules of the water park keep foiling him the entire time, which is great. But it's like everybody else just kind of seems like, I don't know if I want to kill these people. Everybody clearly wants to, is either doing this because they feel like they have to, or like, it's like amusing to them in some way. And so, yeah, I think I think honestly, ultimately, to me, it doesn't really matter like what ends up coming of it, because I think it's already accomplished a goal of introducing a level of humanity into the dynamic between heroes and villains that like most anime just like kind of don't ever attempt to do, and it's also kind of part of the thing why it contributes to my thoughts that like clearly this is like, it just adds to the atmosphere of like, clearly this is not the real world, because look at the way these people are reacting to like life or death situations. They're just like so like nonchalant and just kind of like, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, on that specifically, there was a big shift I felt in episode 4. Like after all the carnage and the big battle, the buildings just pop back up. And I was like, what? Yeah. Whoa. Because like it was such a big thing in the early episodes for the two characters to like, survey the destruction and the rubble and be like, this is what we're fighting for.
Doc, that was the kaiju's power that did the blasting of the buildings in that episode, because it was flattening the cars. So when the kaiju's defeated, so it wasn't. So it wasn't the world. Okay, it wasn't the world resetting itself. It was just the kaiju's power.
So it's like it wasn't causing any physical damage. It was only like moving everything to a different plane.
Yeah, and that's why I did with the missiles. That
I definitely. I mean, yeah, that's it. You catch that in a couple different kaiju have powers to screw up poor Galma's Etano circus. But okay, I didn't know that they did that to the buildings. Okay. Well,
I don't think it was ever properly established, really, but it, to me, made the most sense as to what happened. Because the buildings, of course, are just flat out destroyed otherwise, and then we've got this different visual of, oh, they're just flattened, and like, no, that's just the kaiju's power losing its effects at that point.
Okay, fair enough. So
I don't know if I brought this up last episode too, but it does bear, or like it is good to remember that one of the biggest cruxes of Gridman's like whole thing in the original series is that after he was done beating the shit out of some kaiju and like the whole area around him was destroyed, one of his powers was to like raise his arms and like repair everything so that it would go back to normal at the end. And obviously that's something that these shows have played with like always. So that's just something that I try to keep in the back of my mind, because it's like an element of the original show that they clearly are always like, you know, trying to like look at in some way. So I don't know how specifically that references that, but obviously a lot of people that are watching these shows have never seen the original Gridman. So
yeah,
that's a good thing to remember.
It's totally important to point out, and in the anime things are restored, you know.
Yeah.
Or
I think there is one specific scene at the end of the anime where like Gridman finally reaches full power, kills Alexis, and then you know, does the Alexis Carib, and
just
then
the name Alexis reads. My name's Alexis. I am Superman.
I don't know, man. Nothing will ever for me
Kramer.
beat that the villain in the original show is called Khan Digifer. Is the best name for a villain I've ever heard.
Amazing.
That
It's
rules.
incredible.
Good.
And Alexis Carib is basically just like an anime version of him. They look exactly the same, but they look exactly the same except for one of them is designed by Koyama, so he looks like a Inferno Cop character.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there is the climactic battle at the end of the last episode of the Gridman anime. He does like do the like arms raised thing and repairs the city and stuff like that. So.
Leaving on the fresh scent of pine.
Well, then let me approach this the other way then and say that I think it's interesting that now the kaiju have started, rather than their powers being like empirically destructive, like they appear to just be like screwing around with like dimensional planes and, you know, the fabric of space, rather than knocking buildings over. Because it seems, I mean, I don't recall any other like massive destruction in this show than that first time. And
episode 6, when it levels the entire area around it, the centaur, like it just makes a massive crater.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's that's Dynazenon landing.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, that's not Dynazenon.
No, yeah, there's
the dinosaur, right?
Its cowards.
No, that's
like centaur thing just like completely flattens like an entire.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
like probably 10 city blocks.
It's a fucking Sim City disaster, is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but again,
never mind.
I think what Doc is getting at is that there's really only been one episode where we see like the after effects of all this stuff.
Yeah.
As like a pointed like scene of them like literally digging around in the rubble and like seeing the effects of their work.
Yeah, otherwise it doesn't seem.
Once.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to like register with anyone. Which
that was my criticism in the last pod we did.
Which I find like noteworthy.
Yeah.
Because what's going on there? But okay, I had to directly answer the question. What do I think about the relationship between the hero team and the villain team? I echo what Marc said in terms of like humanizing to the point where like it sort of made me like feel ill at ease about the conflict at all, because I'm like, why? No one wants to do this. Like, why are we doing this? And I mean, maybe that's like kind of the point, or maybe that's one of the ways that they want you to feel. I don't know. But I can't help but get the sense that there are larger forces at work. Like, I don't know if it's going to be parallel worlds like Shadon said, but just something about the Xeno paradoxes, which I won't get into detail on this week because they didn't really come up at all in these episodes. But like, their purpose as paradoxes was to like support the belief that metaphysically at bottom everything is the same substance. The things like change and motion or illusion, that everything is one. So like just kind of deploying those makes me wonder if, like, it makes me question whether or not anything in the show that feels intentional like this, these kind of intentional relationships, are just because. I'm sure that there's going to be some kind of reason behind it, other than just characterization for its own sake. That's just a feeling. I don't think, I'm not like negative on it going either way. I think doing it either way could be good depending on how it's done.
Fair. Okay, next question from Rackham. And funnily enough, I think you may have already covered this a little bit, Doc, and it goes something a little bit like this. Do you think there could be a more sinister force manipulating the kaiju eugenesis and perhaps even Gauma/Team Dynazenon that is possibly hiding in plain sight within the show's world? My answer to this is yes, and it's Chisei, because again, the OP has already hinted at this. She is the anomaly amongst the main characters. What the hell is she doing there? What's going on with her? She's piloting, dinosaur every now and again. But I mean, heck, if it turned out she was the one behind the kaiju in either knowingly or unknowingly, I would believe that. But we'll see. We will see. But I think that the easy answer, just again from the clue from the OP, is her specifically.
Well, and also we had a scene in episode 5 where they pretty clearly show that even when she's like in a swimsuit, she's still wearing like an arm covering of some kind. So
Yeah,
there's clearly something there that they want to draw attention to, that she's either like hiding.
She also finds this weird little like white orb thing that looks like some sort of like plant seed of some description.
Yeah,
I thought that was Koyomi's and
Yeah.
she found that, but I could be wrong. Clearly, I
found
didn't
it in
watch
his
the
room,
shows in
but
a good attentive way.
I
this
don't
week.
know. Yeah, I don't know what exactly the significance of that is yet, because they've showed very little of it in episode 6. But yeah, in episode 5, I think that was the biggest like nod within the actual show itself, that like something was up with her,
It's
because
it's
her and Minami were like in a changing room, and she was wearing this like black sleeve, and Minami was like, "Oh, like, what's going on?"
I
there?"
think because
So-
it was that overt, I feel like it's a red herring. Not to
I
no
would
pun
say
intended.
I would agree with you if there was not so much like hilariously overt symbolism in the show that they have actually followed up on. Like the Ankh puzzle, there's the
Right.
scene in episode, I want to say maybe 6, where Koyomi is eating dinner with what's her name?
What is boss lady's
Inamoto.
name? That's her old name.
And literally the first thing that you see in that scene is their umbrellas propped up against the table, and they're making a
the heart.
Yeah.
So
That was
I
funny.
want to say, like, part of me agrees with you. The other part of me is like, nah, that's just kind of what Amamiya does.
Well, she's the
That's just
other
kinda-
character that
kinda
is
the show's
being.
bag.
Well, she's the other character that I feel like is being lampshaded as possibly like bad news.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Like I
No,
can't.
I get extremely bad vibes from her,
Yeah.
especially regarding her relationship with Koyomi is very creepy. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't enjoy the fact that he is like clearly like a 30-something, and she is constantly like clinging to him, and he is. It's
Aren't they
there's-
both the same
it's
age?
bad.
Oh, are you talking about Chisei or are you talking
No.
about Inamoto?
Chisei.
Okay, you're talking about
Chisei
Chisei.
and-
I was
oh,
talking about no.
Inamoto, yes.
Yeah, she's the one
You're
who I'm
right,
saying
yes.
she's the other character who has been
Her and
lampshaded
Chisei
as
are
like
both
bad news.
and I don't enjoy their relationships. I don't enjoy either one of their relationships with Koyomi for different reasons.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, but all of the flashbacks to them in middle school or high school or whatever, where she is clearly doing like some sinister shit, and he is like not on board with it. Yeah,
I can't help but
she's-
feel like
she's
it's.
bad.
Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm agreeing with you. She's bad news. Something about her is not right.
Yeah,
It feels less not right than her incredibly sinister form in the flashbacks that Koyomi has about her,
I know.
where she's like clearly doing like something either illegal or like morally wrong.
It's like flowers of evil
Um,
shit happening in those flashbacks.
You know, it's going to turn out to be her who killed or possibly
Dude,
contributed to Minami's
this-
sister's death.
This is like
I
what I
was
was going to
thinking
say is that there's a relationship
But
there,
I'm like
maybe
trying
somehow.
to make the ages match up, because I feel like none of their ages are definitive, but I get the vibes that her and Koyomi are in their 30s. They're like maybe in their early 30s, and everybody else is, Chisei is obviously a middle school student, and everybody else is in high school age. Except for like the kaiju eugenicists are another group of people. I'm like, how old are they? Like, are they in their 20s?
They're 5,000 years old.
Oh, yeah. But like these forms, how old are they supposed to be?
How old are their
But
bodies?
I guess you're right. It kind of doesn't matter ultimately because they're all 5,000-year-old Chinese mummies.
Yeah.
But
Caesar is still going to get ID for booze, though. Like
it's the eternal question in anime of how old are they on paper and how old are they really?
Oh, God.
Like the kids from Evangelion, and like how old are they on paper? And then by the third movie, they're all 30.
And then we have that shit, like, you see sometimes like this childlike character is really 1,500 years old.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to lust after this chibi vampire.
Me, you bastards.
Yeah. Right. It's our favorite trope here on this show.
Every decent human being with good morals absolutely loves.
Yes.
The 5,000.
Yes. Totally. But yeah. So I maybe just because I'm growing to like her more, I'm like, is it really Chisei? Is she like the real bad one? I don't know. Because like, both we talked about her and Inamoto, the former Inamoto, being bad news, but like, I mean, they are like something is going on, but I like them both as characters a lot and think that they really are pulling their weight now in the story. So I'm,
they do a really good job of making me feel absolutely creeped out by both of them. Really believable, like real life ways, especially Inamoto, because I have it in my notes that I have been in the exact situation that Koyomi was in, where he was eating dinner with her and her husband shows up, and I felt a wonderful symphony of empathy and sympathy for Koyomi and just utter disgust at the same time. Because I'm past the point in my life where I need to be like hanging out with some old flame who is now married.
Yeah. You got to feel like part of you is got to be like, come on, Koyomi. I mean, come on. Like, what are you doing?
I'm where he is in his life now. And I am way past the point in my life where I need to like torture myself by
well, like with Minami, he doesn't have a visual representation, but he does have his own angst of a kind, if you know what I mean. The links he just cannot break, no matter how hard he tries. At least not for the moment, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we move on to the next question?
Next. All right, next set of questions comes from Kate Rose. Do you think Chisei's ability to pilot the Dynazenon means that the original four aren't as special as they first assumed, or is there another reason / explanation? So, Suzumu, I keep mispronouncing his name. I'm so sorry. I'm actually going to look
up it. Suzumu, but it's really pronounced Shizumu.
I don't know why it threw me off.
But then again, I'm just going to intercede here. I'm going to just do a little bit of an intermission and say, Funimation, I said last time that Funimation were garbage at everything, and they continue to prove it because they still haven't fixed this, by the way. Did you notice that when the episode 6 title cards came up, it said episode 3?
I did notice that. And I was like, oh, are they doing something meta here in the show? No, it's just an error.
I'm glad they're now the biggest anime company in the US.
I mean,
isn't that wonderful?
It rules.
I mean, there's probably people like get annoyed at like translation and stuff like that. People are losing their shit over the use of the word sus and all this. And that's a creative choice. But I don't understand how you cannot literally read the Arabic numeral 6 on that title card and not then think, this clearly must be episode 6. I will put 6 in. Did the person who subtitled that have a real difficulty ordering things online? Do they always order bread rolls in bunches of 3 rather than half a dozen? Seriously.
Well, I mean, okay, so I know,
garbage.
like, I'm sure that there's like
deal in like live releasing and translating anime like in essentially real time. They have always been the worst in terms of like quality of subtitles, and not just because of mistakes like that. Like their translations have also been pretty universally subpar in years past, especially since they started doing this stuff live. So at least compared with like Crunchyroll and a lot of the other services that no longer exist.
Yeah, I give it 2 weeks before the subtitles for this particular show just turn to Lorem Ipsum.
What
2
was
weeks.
God, what was
Believe
the
that.
one? What was the one that Sunrise was pushing really hard that had all the Gundam on it? Oh my God, it was a streaming service from a few years ago.
That narrows it down. Oh, Daisuke.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to love Daisuke a lot, but holy shit,
Well,
that mobile
Daisuke
experience was
pretty easy to play
horrid.
'cause it was free.
It was
but-
free, but I mean, they actually did have a lot of stuff on there for paying customers at one point in the service's life cycle.
That did not last long.
No, but like
The fate of all free to play.
the mobile app was just so terrible. But like, so regarding Funimation, I just want to say about what you guys brought up. I mean, it's a really hard job that they're doing. Like you said, like doing this in real time, doing it so quickly. They're probably understaffed. I wouldn't be afraid to bet a decent sum of money that they're understaffed and they're having the same small group of people do this for a large number of shows, and mistakes happen and errors happen. But I think the bigger issue in the case Shadon is talking about is like, the error has been out in the wild for a while. I'm sure it's been reported, like the sort of response time to fix those things is
Well, they're fix the fucking web players. They're not fixing this anytime soon.
right.
Yeah.
I think
they'll tell me
time.
They'll tell me it'll take 3 months, but really they mean 6. Come on. But look, like I agree with you, Doc. Translation is difficult, and I'm like Mark said, sometimes translation. I'm willing to accept a degree of error in that.
Well, I'm not talking about like the sus thing. I'm talking about like the technical aspects.
I just also want to point out I am also not talking about that.
Yeah,
I do not support the hysteria around the sus.
Oh no. I just to draw it back. What I'm trying to say here is I draw the line at typos and not getting your fucking episode numbers right. That is basic shit. If you've got a spell checker on your script, which you should do, you press the button, it does the spell check. Done. Jesus Christ. Anyway. So the question was regards to Chisei's ability to pilot the Dynas soldier. And presumably also the others, actually, because I think there's a bit of interchangeability on who can pilot what. I mean, so I wouldn't be surprised if she could like drive Dyna Striker, for example. The thing is, Shizumu mentions that he and the other UGSs believe that Minami, Koyomi, Yomogi, etc., are also kaiju users. And so my guess, again, tying into the hint we got in the OP, is that Chisei probably is a special individual, much the same way as the rest of the team are. She is, she's arguably the one creating the kaiju, I would say still. That's my best guess. Whether intentionally, willfully, consciously or not, I don't know. But considering the link between them and also the fact that I think there was a hint in fact, there's not even need a hint. Galma can pilot Dyna Striker and Dyna Diver.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that the other eugenicists, if they stole a part of Dynazenon, as they do, and I think they're even considering it, although they don't speak it outright, like they could in theory do that. So I think that there is a very specific set of people in this world who we've met who can do it, but I don't think if you gave it to, say, Emoto, that she could suddenly pilot one of these. When I say pilot, I mean summon, specifically.
Sure.
That would make most sense to me.
I was thinking about this. These episodes are like so understatedly funny. Like there's such a lot of like deadpan humor. Like when Koyomi forms the giant Indy car in the too small room for it, it just cracks me up for some reason. It's so good.
Think that the churro scene might be one of the most subtly hilarious things I've ever seen in an anime.
When you've got no idea what the fuck to say to someone.
Yeah,
and that churro is the metronome of time. It's just like
it's also like, I've said before on this podcast that I really like to see the wheels turning with like animation production.
Mm-hmm.
And nowhere, this is not the first time that Trigger has done something like this, and it's also not the first time that Gainax, this is a classic Gainax technique of putting a funny scene in the show that takes like 5 minutes to resolve itself.
It's so good.
And zero effort animation wise.
Yes, I think that's important. Yeah.
To allow, the production to like catch up to, the rest of the show. And yeah, it's like the perfect example of that. Like I could tell that it was like just like a bald faced, like them making an excuse to like not have to animate an extravagant scene for, 3 minutes, but it was still incredibly funny.
Yeah, this is also
they'd already eaten like 10 churros a piece at that point. They couldn't do any more animating of churros.
Yes.
Like we've done enough studies. We can't do any more. I'm full.
Well, and there is some fantastic churro eating sound design in that scene as well. I just have to point out.
The Foley guy for that episode must have had a field day. He's like, right, we're going to send you on a task. We want to go buy churros and eat them. And he's like, sign me the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also didn't know that
Research.
churros were that readily available in Japan, but apparently they're so common you can buy them at a water park. I don't know if I could even buy a churro at a water park here.
I don't think I
people
could.
who live near me can spell the word churro.
Yeah.
Harsh. The sort of the money saving scene. Yeah, I thought that there was one in every episode, and I enjoyed all of them. The scene it was sort of cringe inducing, but I think it was supposed to be when Koyomi is drinking with Inamoto and her husband, and it's just sort of a lot of like still shots faded into each other as the night passes.
Very jarring, but it works.
But it works, and it's like it's just because time is passing so incredibly slowly for him and dragging on while this incredibly awkward situation plays out. And then the gag in episode 4 when Minami has to leave Yomogi. And she leaves, and it lingers on the shot of him looking at the door, and you hear her walk away. Silence, and then you hear her coming back. Like, you can eat these. Like that was just so good. All those scenes were great.
Very funny.
So, okay, do we have anything else to add to that question about Chisei abilities to pilot Dynazenon?
Oh, well, firstly, I just want to say when she first does it, and like the arms by the side running. Hilarious. I was on the floor. Like incredible scene. Just like arms straight down by this, just like run, and everybody's just like, what the hell is going on? I wonder about this. I mean, I'm conflicted because I like the plot device it introduces, like the sort of turn, like, are we like the chosen ones or whatever? Like, are we, especially in Galma? They don't really spend too much time dwelling on it in these episodes, but Galma definitely does kind of take a moment to ponder it. Like, can anybody just do this? And that would be cool if it came to bear fruit, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like maybe if they kind of had someone try to pilot it and they couldn't pilot, like all that would like take up a lot of time that I think they should probably use on other things. So I don't know if it's going to be the case, for that to come to bear. So I feel like I don't know if just anyone could pilot it. I think Chisei is somehow also special, like the rest of the team. So, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't think. I don't know. I'm of two minds about it.
Find out. Marc, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I'm pretty much in line with y'all. I do go back and forth as to whether or not these, like, the toys that they carry around are simply just tools that anybody could use. Because we've really only ever seen the 5 of them use them or really have any opportunity to ever use them. So yeah, I don't know. I think it could go either way. I don't really have a huge opinion on it at this point, just because I don't have enough.
I think we could all agree what we need to see is that lifeguard get a hold of the Dyna Diver, and he just uses that as a means of enforcing his fascist pool regime.
Just blow kids away with the missiles.
Yeah.
Every time that they.
I told you to stop running. Bear launch.
Yuki says in chat they're here to sell merch. Obviously, that is
Yes.
that's the Doylean reason, right? But the Sherlockian reason, the in-universe reason, there will be an in-universe reason, I think. So that's what we're trying to suss out.
I'd love if episode 7 turned out now there was a subplot where they're starting to sell Dynazenon merch in universe.
Yeah. We know
Okay,
this is the
question.
reason. This is the reason for anything, like the metatextual explanation for almost the introduction of any character or robot or anything in anime was sell merch. Is sell merch.
Oh, yeah.
Sell merch. So yes,
Sell light novels.
It's
sell
like a
manga,
given.
Sell toys. Sell
Right.
Blu-rays.
Because this is all a product, right?
Why
But
so little original anime are made nowadays?
Yeah. I mean, we might as well replace the 4 S's in Dynazenon with dollar signs.
Yeah. Well, there is no easier thing to sell with anime than toys, so they really lucked out on this one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Next question from Kate is the following. What do you think the purpose of the eugenicists, Team Instance Domination, is, and why do you think Galma is calling them eugenicists? Well, I think, again, Shizumu says something to the effect of, or one of them says, we want a world where kaiju are needed,
Yes.
The explanation has been relatively thin on this, and indeed their overall agenda is not quite clear on me. I mean, at the moment, the closest thing I have to a motivation for them is just Juga leading the group and saying, let's just wreck shit. Which, that's really about it thus far. But we will find out more in due course. I think for me, I think that's why they're using the phrase Jesse, because, I mean, if you apply that term more broadly, or rather use it in a more broader sense, obviously eugenicists we think of, for example, Nazi Germany, Third Reich, that's where it's unfortunately got the most connotation with. And part of the eugenics program that they had in mind, of bringing about the dominance of the Aryan race was a part of them cultivating or creating a world in which, was ideal for them. It was a part of that. It was a big part of it. And so I think if you take Shizumu's words at face value, which is we want kaiju to be needed in the world, then the eugenicist thing makes sense. Not to mention that they are literally advancing the form of the kaiju, and that when they do the whole instance domination thing, the kaiju get larger, they take on a different form. Well, not a different form as such, but rather a more evolved form. Think of it like going for a Pokemon evolution, that kind of thing. Yeah. And they of course get much larger.
Especially at the most recent one where 2 of them are doing it.
Yes,
that's the biggest
indeed.
change for sure.
That is a big deal, as it turns out. So I think the term works, but I also think it just also could arguably be a bit of a detriment to the show slightly, just because it is such a charged term. That one might argue that it might be a bit too unsubtle. I mean, Marc, you rightly said, this show, is very on the nose with certain images and stuff like that. And there's to a point where I think that's really cool. I like that whole scene with Omoso and Yomogi, for example, when he suddenly realizes he's the third wheel. He just didn't realize, and I'm going to talk about it in more detail in a little bit. But I think that while it feels to me like a naming convention that you'd find from the shows the oldest Gridman era shows, the 1993 ones, where you'd have villains with names I've started watching stuff this is Tokusatsu, so it's not Subaraya stuff, but where you have things like the Crisis Empire and all that. And hell, do I need to bring up the time that I think it was one of the masked riders actually fought Nazis? It makes for an easy shorthand for establishing that these are the villains. So I like that they're trying to back that up with a little bit with Shizumu's explanation, but I think I can't really conclude one way or the other until we know further what the end game of all of this is. What's the end goal of it? What's at stake? Which is also a criticism I have of Dynazenon thus far, in that I'm not quite clear on what the stakes are still. I know I complained about this last time, and now we're halfway through the show. I'm I still don't really know. And I'm okay. I mean, obviously, the stakes in Gridman evolved as time went by to the point where it was more about saving Kane Shinjo's heart. Literally, I might add. That's also funny enough when Gridman first appears, so that's your callback right there. But even up until that point, as I mentioned in previous podcasts we did on this, on episodes 1 to 3, people were literally disappearing. They were disappearing out of existence, out of time and space and continuity. And in Dynazenon, the risk of what happens if our team loses is.
I think we're about to find out. Because
Yeah,
this is also the first episode. Episode 6 is also the first episode where they have even come close to losing.
Yep.
yeah,
They've just absolutely dominated the kaiju eugenicists up until this point, to the point where like very little, like the supposed physical conflicts in the show have not really. I mean, they've just kind of been massacres.
I've not been feeling the tension of it, to be quite honest. I mean, this is again another thing where I think Gridman gets this right, whereas Dynazenon as a show doesn't, because again, obvious, but Gridman has the big blinking blue light when he's like, nearly exhausted. And there's also the other imagery of like, oh crap, the junk's exploding and all this. And Dynazenon like gets thrown around a bit, but no one seems to like get physically hurt or like injured inside of it. I mean, we see it sparking at the end of this episode, which suggests it's in a like worse state, but like
yeah.
This is the only fight that lasts for more than a few seconds.
Yeah, it also does kind of come off that they've only really set up the defeat of Dynazenon as an excuse to introduce Grid Knight. Which, at the other end of things is, that's a narrative technique, a classic narrative technique.
Yeah.
But I guess it'll just depend on how that pays off.
Yeah.
And where that goes.
So to answer Kate's question after that long-winded digression now, which is our, raison d'etre on this podcast, I don't know what their purpose is at the moment beyond wreck shit. And maybe that is a purpose in of itself. Maybe that's all it'll turn out to be. Like, at last after 10,000 years, I'm free.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, kaiju a lot of times are pretty mindless. They're just there to represent like a primal force of destruction. So it could very well turn out that all this shit about kaiju being formed from human wills and them trying to form a world where people need kaiju could all just be bullshit, and really they're there to just destroy stuff. I think that would kind of undercut the show a little bit, but
it would.
Yeah, at the same time, it would not surprise me considering that kaiju are there's very rarely nuance to kaiju.
Yeah, I think it's fair if, Shadon asked what's at stake if the heroes lose. I mean, you could ask the same thing about the villain team. Like, there doesn't appear to be like appears to be very much like, well, we'll just come back and do all this again tomorrow. And again, maybe this is like the larger point, although it doesn't really seem like this is let's talk about how the nature of conflict is really hollow and no one believes in it, but the powers that be make us do it and all that Gundam shit. Like, it doesn't really seem like that kind of show. So
yeah, I mean, to answer your point there, Doc, like, even though I did complain about this in the previous podcast we did, I should still note that the eugenicists are still the aggressors here. They are still wrecking the city. The show's not doing, in my opinion, a great job of making the human cost of that clear. But it is still a cost nonetheless. So there is a clear, as much as I say, eugenicists, strikes a strong, core in our heads of oh, these are definitely bad guys because of all of our pre-existing association with that phrase. They are still the villains here. They still want to wreck shit. So they do need to be stopped. Yeah.
I guess they're the villains. It's hard to say for me at the moment. I mean, I'm sure it will turn out to
everybody
be
is so ridiculously nonchalant about everything that it's kind of hard to really like or dislike anybody too much at this point.
Yeah, and we don't know, and we just don't know, the ideologies are not super well formed. So there's not, if you're gonna do rooting interest based on likability, well, that's hard because everybody's kind of likable at this point. But if you're going to do it based on ideology, that's also a little difficult because it's just sort of I don't know, we're by default rooting for Yomogi and Co. because that's the perspective we're thrown into. But we don't really know super much what the goals are of the other side. So it's tough.
I mean, just to go back to Gridman as a comparison, Mark, you said that kaiju are not particularly known for being employed with nuance in a story. I think that Gridman actually does decently well with that because all of the kaiju that Kane summons, like up until the point when she gets taken over by Alexis, and essentially her heart is used for that really weird fucking like blah 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 one. But anyway, like they are meant to be broader expressions of her like violently immature like nature and lashing out at people who have the most mildest slights. So I was like the level to which she hates people for, you know, it's a disproportionate reaction from her to say that she wants her you know, her teacher or homeroom person dead for bumping into her in the corridor. And so what better of an expression of that disproportionate reaction than to turn it into a gigantic kaiju that acts on her behalf to kill that guy? So I think that they work as an expression of her like immaturity there. In this show, maybe it will be revealed that the kaiju are byproducts of the events of the episodes we've seen thus far in some respects or another. Like if you told me, for example, that the kaiju in episode 6, the, you know, the great big lion one, whatever it was called, was kind of birthed is somehow from the discord that Koyomi was feeling with Emoto, like, you know, what's going on. Like if there was a direct like causal link between him, I would buy that. That would be interesting.
That also makes total sense considering how they need 2 people all of a sudden to control that particular kaiju. And those 2 people become synced in a way
Their
because
personalities, right?
Mujina is displaying some of the other's emotions and personality and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty easy jump to make for sure.
Yeah. I think that's all there, but the criticism I want to get across here is we're halfway through, and I feel like the show should have gone further in establishing what the intentions of at least the Genesis is here, beyond like the vagueness of we want a world in which kaiju belong in, and what the stakes are for the group. Like if they fail, like again, I've said before about people dying, and I'm not saying we need to have all the cards played right now. I mean, I know that in Gridman, Alexis, as you rightly pointed out, Marc, was a fucking Inferno cop character. It's like,
well, he's
how could you possibly not tell he was the villain? You know,
he's a Luluco character. He is Over Justice from Luluco. That's the exact same design.
They are designed. They're both designed by Shigeto Koyama, so that there is a through line there. But
justice.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just think that there's at this point still so many different ways that the show could go, and it just really depends on like how much is, you know, how much are they willing to like subvert everything that they've shown up until this point. Also, the thing that also lends, I think, a bit more credence to the idea that these kaiju are spawned directly out of the, you know, interactions and emotions of the characters on screen is kind of supported by just like how many quote unquote B plots there are with like people's like, you know, Minami searching for information on her sister, Koyomi's whole thing with Inamoto, Yomogi developing feelings for Minami,
Chise's jealousy.
There's
a lot of feelings,
and all. Also,
it really is Wonder Egg all over again, where monsters are spawned by, like, you know, the horrific emotion events. But it's a common thing, as you said, though, Marc, and that's not criticism again. But it's just a comparison point.
No, I think that trope works.
I mean, to bring it back to what I was saying about Alexis, like, I mean, obviously he was the villain in Gridman. You can tell that a mile off. I could go up to someone in the street, show them a character sheet of various characters from Gridman, and say, which one of these do you think is the villain? And I guarantee you, people who've even never seen anime before, like, it's that, like, you know, flaming Darth Vader motherfucker there. That's the guy. That's the bad guy. Like, put him on a lineup, he's the guy. But, even though that was identifiable, his overall agenda, like, wasn't, like, really revealed until the point he backstabbed Akane. Like, you know, there was still a shift over time. So I'm saying that what Dynazenon as a show could have done is it could have had it get to that point now where we can identify what we believe is the actual agenda of the villains. And it turns out, as we discussed in the other questions, oh, no, we're going to flip that, turn upside down, it's something else in the end. But I don't mind if, like, having a shift of, like, one paradigm to another in terms of motivation and overall end goals, as long as there is a paradigm to begin with. And currently it's, we want a world where kaiju belong. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean?
Well,
Yeah.
if you can count on any company to flip the script, rearrange a chessboard or whatever in a extremely quick fashion, but also a satisfying fashion, I think Trigger is your company. Even the folks who worked on Evangelion to Gurren Lagann, and even Gridman, I don't remember them like really cracking that open until over halfway through. So I think that they can establish all that stuff quickly. They could set up a really impactful subversion in a short order. So like, I am reasonably optimistic about its ability to.
We're
do
gonna
that.
find out what happened. I mean, we're gonna find out what's going on. It just
Yeah.
will. It depends on how long.
I mean, has Ansi, aka Grid Knight, earned his PhD in exposition? We'll find out next time. He's gonna like, I'm just gonna lay it all down for you.
Yeah.
So
Well, my biggest question is, does he come out of that big hero suit, and is he still a kid, or is he like old, like punished Venom Anti?
punished.
I kind of hope it's that.
I've
hope he comes out of there with a beard and an eye
I've traveled many digital worlds in search of my one true foe. I mean, friend, Gridman.
You little bastards don't know everything I've been through to bring you this information.
What if it's viral instead?
Oh God, the legendary, forever famed Trigger finally tying one of its shows back into Gurren Lagann, like everybody thought Kill la Kill was going to be back in the day.
Oh, I didn't even know that people thought that. That's fun.
There was so many conspiracy theories that the final Kamui was actually the first mecha, and yeah, there's a lot of
very intriguing.
Galaxy Brain.
Yeah,
very intriguing. Well, can you repeat Kate's question so I can answer it? Because I don't remember what it was.
What do you think the purpose of the eugenesis is, and why do you think Gamma is calling it eugenesis?
Why do I think he's what?
Calling them eugenicists.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I mean, Gamma isn't calling them because he thinks they're eugenicists. Like, they self-identify as that as well, as something to know.
Do they?
I'm fairly confident they do.
I think that I don't think they ever call themselves that. I just think that they're, to my memory, they're like, if you want to call us that, sure. But like, we've established my memory is very bad. So, if we could confirm that somehow at any point between now and next week or during the episode or whatever, that'd be cool. But I think either way, right? I mean, whether it's one way or the other, it doesn't affect my answer to this question, I don't think. So like, what is their purpose? So I guess up to this point, we know that a couple things that Shizumu is really the only / best character for like elucidating kind of what they think. If it's a little cryptic, I mean, he's still like, will say some things like kaiju grow by people's wills. I think this is important because to me, what this says is that they are a collective invention. I don't think that there's going to be a single mastermind a la Akane that's creating them. So I think the Chisei theory, that's another reason why I'm out on it, is because I think this is maybe even a subconscious thing, like we were saying, like a result from different kinds of emotions or the state of the world or something like that. So he says that they grow by people's wills, and like what they want to do, the eugenicists want to do, is create a world where kaiju are needed. The interesting thing is like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean for kaiju to be needed? Because like, their interpretation of it could be super duper different. Because clearly, like, I think kaiju, I say clearly, not clearly, but I think kaiju maybe have been there all along, but they've not been visible to the general. I mean, there we have shots of them sitting in the open on like a telephone pole or something like that, being really, really docile until the eugenicists come and see me, like, and when they do the domination, they sort of like turn them aggressive. And so like their idea of kaiju being needed appears to be like kaiju expressing some kind of like dominance over humanity, or like carving out their place in the world through battle or something like that. And, so like, where do they come from? Well, Shizumu says that kaiju are born from human beings suffering. Like kaiju, again, this is like going to my collective thesis. Like kaiju, he's like, human beings are suffering. They're like bound by things, and they want to be free. They want to be free from what binds them, and like kaiju are able to make that happen somehow. How? We're not exactly sure of the mechanics of that yet. But I think one more interesting thing that I think goes to like the fact that the eugenicists are kind of like anti-humanity, or at least see themselves as different from humanity and want kaiju to assert some kind of will over them, or like dominance over them. It's like, when Shizumu talks to the two leads about people as if he's not a person. And he says, like, aren't people sad? Like, people like to give themselves some... Because we ask them, like, are you two dating? And they're like, oh, dating, awkward. And then he's like, well, people like to give themselves purpose like that, Isn't that sad? They like to constrain themselves and also seek freedom through, like, all the while being constrained. And they like to influence each other, but they can't help but be influenced by other beings like themselves. Isn't that sad? And so, like, it seems like they don't really have, or at least Shizumu doesn't really have, a super high opinion of humanity, and wants kaiju to exert themselves against humanity. And now where Galma feels like he's like where he's against them, like, he wants them to be free, right? And the eugenicists like practice eugenics on the kaiju, basically by making them all into these aggressive war machines. And Galma's like, no, I want them to be free. So like, he sort of understands them and like knows that they've been around or whatever, and just he's not into this idea of pitting them against humans. And just wants them to exist as they are, and that will be fine. So this is all like what I've gleaned from a few lines of dialogue, and so that's what I think. That's my working thesis of like what they're about and why Galma is against them.
Cool. Anything to add, Mark?
Nope.
No.
Fair enough then. Well, actually, your statement of that's it is perfect, because we are at the end of our Patron questions. So thank you and Kate for throwing those our way. Just to those listening at home, again, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'd like to get on asking questions of these fine chaps as we go through Dynazenon and other shows, just pop over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Warui Deshou. You got $2, $3, $5 tiers. Tiers of increasing quality and quantity of content. Do give that a look-see, but you only need to be on the $2 tier to ask us questions for Dynazenon, if I'm not mistaken. This is the point where Dogged Caesar's like, no, you're wrong!
You're wrong.
I knew it!
You're wrong, Shadon, because you're British. Boom.
Well, you're
The age-old feud rears its ugly head again.
Well, you're from Tennessee.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom.
I didn't even say the country. I went local.
I know.
That's where I
know. That bar in
the specter of the 1700s is back upon us once again.
State level, motherfucker.
We'll never escape it.
I know.
Brother against brother.
Cripes.
Forever a colony.
So,
actually,
right.
Look, since I'm supposed to have the reins on this bad boy this week, so
you do.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to say that we're going to take a very brief break because I need to refill my beverage, and we will be right back.
it's risky. You said that you miss me, couldn't look me in the eye when you kiss me. See, I know something is wrong, and I can feel that this love is gone. So now I gotta deal with the heartache. I gotta face what's real and I can't take all the pain that I feel, cause it's killing me. When you say that you still wanna be with me, confused, that's not an excuse. You've been feeding me lies and I've got proof, cause I'm feeling it right when I hug you, and now I'm bleeding inside cause I love you.
Hi folks, we are back. I just got finished dealing with the world's most incompetent robot, a first floor vending machine. I just always think that arm is going to drop the bottle. Like, when it grabs it, it's like sort of tilted, like not fully in place. I'm like, no, someone fix this arm.
But you've got those like little digital displays where they've got like little lines for them. I just want to imagine, Doc, it just recognizes you come in, you type in, it just says "fuck you" in text. It just scrolls from left to right.
Yeah, payment accepted, but
stay free.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, thank you to all the lovely folks who submitted questions. And again, as Shadon said before the break, you could do that as well if you sign up the $2 tier on Patreon for Dynazenon. It's our Stream of Thought series, which the $2 patrons can submit questions that we have to answer. So get on that if you want to participate. Now we're going to go to like free and open discussion. So the shackles are off. We can express our own will, unlike the kaiju.
Finally.
That's what you think. I've never been shackled, baby. Anyway, all right. Well, I'll open up.
Can
Can we talk very briefly about the pool scene in which Galma falls into it?
Please.
Because
Yes.
I've made this point so many times, and I think it's become like a little bit of a meme in our own little like Discord community, where I talk about crafted humor. But this is like basically, I'm just going to point to Dynazenon and say, this is it. Like, this is why I like. This is why I like when you have like actual thought put into your jokes, and you know there is a setup and a payoff. I mean, I also want to note just how great it is to see in that little montage that happened in episode 5 that Shizumu's like riding around on the rings, going through the Warpack, and he just does not give a fuck. He's just like, is this entertainment? What is this? Am I supposed to be smiling right now? It's legitimately like when Galma's striding after, he's like, I'm so gonna capture you. Like, when it got to the part, I was thinking, so I want this to become its own like little like skit, like Roadrunner, you know, and Wile E. Coyote. Can we get Galma falling off a cliff? It goes.
Like, what was the in the anime club anime called Genshiken? There was a show they were all obsessed with. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a little anime, an in-universe only show that they watched, and people enjoyed it so much that they made a real anime out of that anime. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, I want the spinoff of Water Park Days with Team Dynazenon in the Eugenesis forever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of good jokes in these episodes as well. Like, I think one of the other ones that's quite good is when Minami comes to visit Yomogi when he's sick, and they have like discussions. He's like, "I've got to go now. Can I borrow like Dino Soldier to go?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And she leaves, and there's this just like dead pause for about maybe 5 seconds or so, and she comes back in and says, "Oh yeah, you can eat that, by the way. Bye."
Right.
Like that's good.
Yeah.
Like Trigger for me, like I feel very mixed on it at times, because sometimes I remember that they're great, and sometimes I remember that they literally sometimes write scripts which are absolute garbage. I mean, I'll bring up Brand New Amber again, but I'll also mention they're just not typically very good with subtlety, which is sometimes to their strength and also sometimes to their detriment. Like, I mean, we can talk again about Kill la Kill and its handling of fascism, but we'll not do that right now, of course. But I think that if there's something they're consistently decent, if not great at, is comedic streaks. Like, Dynazenon has humor in it that doesn't feel like it pervades and like degrades the show by being there, because it overwhelms the actual subject matter at hand. Like, it tackles it, like we're dealing with stuff like suicide and like, you know, lingering resentment mixed with affection, like it's kind of almost like poisonous toxic attitude that Koyomi has. They managed to mix in really well. So I think that even if I feel like when we get to the end of Dynazenon, I'm like, quite good as Gridman or whatever, like, you know, which coming from me is hilarious because I used to really not care for Gridman. It still made me legitimately laugh out loud, and that Only Fools and Horses comparison is why I brought up the. Yeah, I mean, Kate has also mentioned the amazing gag of Juna, like, you know, constantly getting hit by debris.
Man, that's a great running gag. Yes,
it's fantastic. I'm just
meteors.
waiting. I'm waiting for the next space battle to happen, and it's just he's gonna have like a little satellite drops on him or something.
Yes.
It could only make it better as if it was really like an old like Looney Tunes skit where it was a piano or an anvil. I would be okay with that.
I mean, from Trigger, I could absolutely see that, because they are noted Westaboos, so they could definitely do that.
Yeah, they could. But the thing I was thinking of, the Only Fools and Horses comparison, is there's a particularly famous moment that I'm sure like people who know the show like know what this like particular moment is, along with the chandelier falling, which is when Del Boy falls through the bar, and it's just like he just leans back and just David Jason just goes, meh. And it's hilarious. It just falls completely out of shot. And then I was thinking of that when Galma falls into the pool, because he's walking on the pool, and then the pool does this like little curve, but as it does, because it's not like, you know, a uniform square shape. And he's not even looking, and he just goes completely straight into it like this.
Yes.
And I was pissing myself with laughter. I was like, that's a great joke. It's because you can see it coming a mile away. There's, you know, like it's going to happen. But then when it does, the payoff is just brilliant. So yeah, even though I don't know if Dynazenon is going to deliver on it for me and be as good as Gridman, which is the standard of comparison I'm going to use for it, really, because it seems like the most fair. It's still funny. It still made me laugh, and I'm still enjoying the jokes in it. Which, given that I tend to find humor in a lot of anime cringeworthy most of the time. I mean, we talked about since Tomazaki, for example.
Right. Yeah.
I'm legitimately impressed by Trigger. Like, they have a lot of strengths, and comedy seems to certainly be one of them. So kudos to them for that.
I think like the thing that makes all the comedy work in these episodes is that there's always someone to whom the absurd events that are happening are no big deal. They just like, it's nothing. They just deadpan. Like a perfect example is when like Galma's having breakfast at the Yomogi house, and they're just eating, and his mom's like watching TV, like dead set on watching the TV, and my man is like, oh boy, life is tough, but it's nothing compared to how it was 5,000 years ago. And mom's like, flip, flip, And like when the eugenicists are like having breakfast at a restaurant, they're just openly discussing their plan, and you have the waitress in the background like, and what would
wearing
you
the
like,
outfits
dear?
as well. Just wearing the
Exactly.
outfits
Total
in-
cosplay. Like she must like serve a lot of weirdos. Because she's
You just
just
don't
like
bat an eyelid if you
nothing,
dealt with that shit as a
not
server.
batting an eye, and like everything at the pool, like is just like punctuated by other people, just like like almost trying to like, I don't know, capture or kill this guy, and like the thing that hold them back is like these mundane like pool rules. Is just incredible. Like, and, like my favorite bit is like that they kept going back to it, and like when they were all going to leave together, they do the shot of, they cut back to the lifeguard who just has his lips to the megaphone, ready to yell at the offending Galma again. It's so like everything, like it just, everything really works well. We talked about like the sort of money and energy saving scenes. Yeah, I think this, like what endeared me to these episodes is all this like really, really well done comedy that like I'm laughing and I'm just warming up to the cast the whole time. I'm caring about all of them so much more because like they're making me laugh, and they're in these like funny situations that are like for the most part pretty relatable. And yeah, man, like this show's really, really grown on me, and like the comedy has been like a key part of it.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest appeals of the characters in this show is that they all kind of seem like normal people that are all that are continuously put in like some extremely anime ass situations. Like maybe not the majority of each episode. The majority of each episode is people living pretty normal lives, but and like pretty normal like human drama happening. But then at the end of each episode, those extremely normal humans get put in a giant golden robot. And but like it, you pointed out, one of you pointed out earlier that Minami uses Dyna Wing to just as transportation to school.
So good.
Which
so
is incredibly funny to me, because that's like not something you ever really see in these things, is these people using
using the giant robots for the most mundane shit.
I know,
like,
but it's like if I had access to like a space plane, I absolutely would fly it to school. If I could.
I love
especially
it,
if
like,
it just disappears when you stop using it. You don't have to worry about
I know.
parking or anything. It's like perfect.
And Yomogi calls her out on it, and she's like,
Yeah.
I was late. Like it
Yeah,
just is
well,
the
it's
most
like,
legitimate
why
thing.
wouldn't you? Why not get in Dyna Soldier and sprint that thing to school? You'd be there in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That thing's stride is like 2 city blocks. You're good. Just go. So yeah, it's well, and I also love that they just get away with training in this like river valley with this like 500-foot tall bridge that they all just hang out on and spawn their different robots, and nobody, the police never come and talk to them. All these giant explosions and like
Yes.
earth-shattering impacts of them, falling down and transporting. And all these
I would
different
love it
things,
if someone just went past on a bike Like,
yeah, like someone drove by in a car, was like, what the?
they didn't even do that. Like, you know, they just.
But then
they just come
again,
around noticing.
that would be the first instance in this show of literally anybody outside of them acknowledging what is happening in this ridiculous world that they live in, and you know.
Well, there is mention of the kaiju
simulation
attacking one of in the classroom. Well, that also plays.
But even then, that's like
because
it's mentioned as a minor inconvenience instead of like this, like the world changing, which is what would happen if it happened in real life.
Yeah,
you know, it's not like
it's just there's been a kaiju thing, and I'm sorry, but the trains around whatever. Like, I feel like the only way, I feel like that has big Edna Krabappel energy. That particular moment, that teacher saying, "It's like, yeah, whatever, don't care."
Yeah.
Yukina also brings up, of course, the best wordplay in the show thus far, which is "Yomo guilty."
I forgot he had like a life outside of Minami and the group. Like he had these other like buddies that are, you know, being flirtatious with him, you know.
He legit like pretty robust friend group before he met these freaks.
Oh yeah. And they were all like super normie. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's right. Isn't it like interesting that like I think like the comedy, not only is it like, you know, just the jokes themselves are well done. I think that it is like just as a whole really important to be in the show because like there's some, you know, there's some dark shit that we discussed and we may discuss more of that is happening. But they've got like a really good balance here, I think, of like it's not overwhelmingly so. Yeah. Like it's the whole thing feels breezy.
A lot of the comedy is like deadpan stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which factors pretty easily into the overall mood of the show, which is pretty deadpan.
Yeah. It's well paced as well. It never comes like in moments where it would deflate the emotion of certain scenes. Like I mean, it would obviously be in quite poor taste if there was like a goofy, like deadpan comedy moment immediately following the revelation about Minami's sister.
Yeah.
Fall
into boobs in the flashback.
No. Or even Dynazon's better than that anyway, even if it was a joke like placed in the and also of course as what's happening with Kiyomi, like it to the show's credit, like the he is in a situation and he's also a character, I'd argue, that is open, or at least would be open in the hands of lesser writers to be easily ridiculed in a way which would be demeaning towards him. Like he looks like sad and pathetic in various parts of this of the episode 6. But he's never. When I say the word pathetic, I don't mean that to be derisive. I mean to point out like that we are meant to feel sympathetic towards him. The show frames him sympathetically in that. It doesn't play any of his plight for comedy, which I think is also a key part of how the show constructs its jokes, in that it's never at the expense of characters for whom, as you rightly pointed out, I think it was Marc said, or Doc said, where he said that didn't care about what was going on, like the stuff with like, you know, the debris constantly falling on him and all that, or Shizuma like in Galma, like, you know, it uses it appropriately without detracting or diminishing the true emotional core of what's going on with these characters. So yeah, props to them.
I would also argue with Kiyomi that it kind of goes both ways, because you know, they do a really good job of making the viewer sympathetic to his sort of plight in episode 6, where he's, you know, put in this really awkward situation. But I would also argue that they do a good job of not necessarily like glorifying his position or making him too sympathetic, because there's that whole scene where he's drinking with Mujina and he's just grumbling about how she's like leading him on and shit, and like clearly the show is not saying, you know, is not on his side in that moment. He's a pretty pathetic figure in that scene, and I was really glad for that, because if there's one thing I hate, it's you know, it's the sort of like, you know,
centering the otaku perspective
centering the otaku perspective in that specific way of like, all women are leading me on if they give me any sort of attention, like all women have feelings for me if they you know, show you like literally any positivity in your life, like blah blah blah. I mean, it's not just the otaku thing, but if we're talking about an anime, you know, it's definitely. So I'm glad that scene was portrayed with such nuance, because like I said, it's a situation I've been in before, and I do not look back favorably upon myself in those situations. And you should not look favorably upon his reaction to them
Yeah.
either, or the fact that he even allowed himself to be in that position.
Yeah.
But, obviously, I think he's obviously going to grow past that because, that's part of what the show is about. But
I'll just add two
and I
things
hope he does. I hope he
Yeah.
does because he's an empathetic character ultimately.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's clearly struggling with probably more stuff than anybody else in the show is, to be honest with you, because he is.
I don't know, Minami though. Like, I mean,
yeah, she can deal with it though, and like has relationships like that she engages.
She doesn't drink booze as an escape mechanism. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, and she's not a hikikomori like holed up in her house, completely hiding from everything. Whereas up until the start of the show, the only reason he's out with these people and interacting with any of these people is because he's kind of been forced into it by being accidentally selected as a robot pilot. Now, granted, that might be less of a sympathetic read than maybe the show wants, because I definitely think an argument could be made that he wants to be there even if he doesn't show it, or at least enjoys. Part of him enjoys driving this awesome robot, race car around. I mean, who wouldn't? But yeah, it's I don't know. That also sort of unrelated, but that also kind of factors into like one of my other favorite sort of subtle comedy things in this show that I don't think that we've pointed to yet, is the very lackluster way that a lot of these characters deliver their like transformation lines. Is actually so funny.
That was a great. I like that as a little subtle like character point in the in episode 6 as to how it almost foreshadowed their defeat. But I'll get to that.
Was just like,
yeah.
But also the fact that like some of their moves don't even have names yet, because in episode 4,
something beam.
Minami says Nantoka beam, which literally just means like something or other beam. And I love that. I hope they never change that. I hope it's always Nantoka beam.
It should be.
That's a way better name than anything. But yeah, and also them playing with the transformation sequence where Yomogi is just coughing through the entire thing. And
oh my god,
because he has and can like barely be there. That's so
awesome.
Great. That is like a very Trigger thing, is like playing with the tropes of an established
I'm in for that.
Like very anime specific, like otaku specific genre. Nothing makes me happy. It's very similar to the type of comedy of wherever Kill la Kill introduces a lot of things and characters by like just absolutely massive giant text on screen. And my favorite thing always in that show is when the text would then just randomly manifest itself within the physical world of the characters, to where like the camera angle would change, but you'd still see the giant text off in the background.
Diegetic
or like
text.
Yui would be like leaning on the text in real life, like
the Ben-Hur poster, but
exactly. That is like one of my favorite things that like Trigger doesn't have a monopoly on it, but I would argue that they are probably the best at it in terms of just like they know these very specific tropes. They're very aware of the type of shows that they're making, and they play with them in very specific ways that make them more interesting than, just another, like something that's just copying the classics, So I feel like Dynazenon does that very well.
It does. I just actually want to, because you mentioned it before, and I think that was probably a good time for me to bring this up, which is, you talked about the scene with Mujika and Kayomi when they're in the restaurant, and I want to just add something to that I thought was really, really neat on this show's part, where it kind of gets to have its cake and eat it. In the way it's presented is that Mujika is hanging out with him not to steal the Dyna Striker. It's something she does opportunistically because she sees it when he drops it while he's pissed, but there's no active effort otherwise on her part prior to that to do so. Which I think is a really... Sorry, Mujina. I keep calling her Mujika. You can always just correct me in chat. I might as well just call her, like, Jane at this point, because I'm terrible at pronunciations. So Jane basically, like, she doesn't, like, practically, like, try to mess with and steal that. It's just something she does opportunistically. And I think that's a really, really neat distinction the show makes here, because I think you were right, Mark, in saying that it would be all too easy for the show to, like, go all in on, the only two female characters that like are adults appropriate for his age, arguably, if we're not counting the fact that Mugen is 5,000 years old. Are like deceitful harlots who treats him like use him as a plaything. So clearly, the only one he can trust is this underage. Oh no, we don't want that. But no, it's a level of nuance that I really, really like, and it also, I think, leaves the door open for more interactions between the two later.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't want to say like I'm just going to start shipping them or anything, but I think there's more to it that could go along between the two. Nope.
Why?
Yeah.
She's
What?
not.
Why?
She's not underage, Mujina, is she?
No,
she's 5,000 years old.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah.
That's
Koyomi is
underage.
underage. She's cradle robbing Koyomi. No, she's an adult, so I don't know. I'm into look, ship Koyomi. And Mujina. She's a wild card. Man,
I very much enjoyed that scene. But again, I enjoy any scene with Mujina in it. She might be my favorite character in the entire show so far.
I love her development thus far. The design's fantastic. Like, but I just
design's great. Also, how outwardly happy she is at the water park.
Yes,
very heartwarming.
The whole like,
I like that she was just like, "Can we come back here after all this is done?"
Exactly.
And they let her.
Please.
Didn't have these in ancient China or whatever it is that they came from.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're gonna wreck shit. But
yeah, can we come back? Very interesting. This show has gone out of its way to show that, it could be read one of two ways. It's either that like the kaiju eugenicists are very interested in the Dynazenon team as people, or they're interested in them as like a curiosity. It just depends on how like actually human at this point you think these 5,000-year-old resurrected anime mummies like actually.
I mean, this is a great point. This is a fantastic point because like there's like a scene talking about like diegetic things, right? Like it felt like the music was like when Shizumu is talking to, I believe it's Yomogi on the roof, and like he starts to leave, like they're playing this like angelic choral music that as soon as he's out of the frame they stop playing. I'm like, yeah, that's feels like another like, and again, just the way he talks a lot of the time, it feels like they don't consider themselves human or they're just straight up not. But anyway, I cut you off. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's very hard to penetrate what they're thinking because, they are 5,000 years old. Like, eventually, like, how human are you if you live so much further past, what any natural human is supposed to live? Like, we don't really have any evidence as to, like, what 5,000 years of collective experience collected in a single human being would look like.
Were they not in cryosleep for a lot of it?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. Is that, it's like how literal is their connection to the characters from the original Gridman show? Like, are they a copy? Like, there's so many different ways that you could attack that. But they're clearly meant to be like older and wiser than like the average, human that looks of their age. They're wise beyond their looks, clearly. Yes. Except for Galma, who, is a dumbass. But
the posters, man. Like wearing the signs and showing up at school.
He's a dumbass, but he's also like way more polite than he has any business being to like his superiors. And he's also like super responsible. Like he has like multiple jobs, like, which is crazy because like you think if he had multiple jobs, he wouldn't have to live under a freaking bridge. But like maybe he just likes,
maybe he's a food off of Yomogi.
Maybe he just doesn't like, maybe he likes not paying rent. I don't know. I probably would like not paying rent if I had the opportunity.
It'd be pretty good.
So. But their framing as characters is very interesting to me. But yeah, Galma especially, it's like
he gives people sick days.
He's like he has every opportunity to be a shithead, and he doesn't take any of them. He's like a very he's a good leader, even though he's like brash and kind of aggressive at times. Like he's a good leader. He makes good decisions. you know, when it comes to his team, he's respectful of the people that he needs to be respectful of, and you know, is like clearly like kind-hearted and like empathetic, whereas any other character like him in any other anime would just be kind of an idiot.
Right.
He's like the perfect himbo. He's like, you know, he's good looking. He's stupid at every opportunity that it would be good for him to be stupid, and charming at it. And then he's, you know, he's kind-hearted and, you know, deceptively wise at others.
He just needs to start putting out fires, and then he can basically be a pro-mare protagonist.
Right.
Basically.
All right, well, I'm doing my talking point about the comedy anyway, so I'll pass the baton over to you both. Feel free. Take it away.
Go ahead.
Can I just say how cool the scene where Gridnight shows up again is? I feel like
Yeah, it's great.
moment in the sun, but I was like, I felt like a child watching that scene. I was like, oh, finally, some real, like, it weirdly enough, completely I was not expecting it to happen at all.
No.
I thought that was a problem they were going to solve by, you know, I thought they were going to have a power of friendship moment. And as soon as Shizumu like kind of looks up at the sky confused, I was like, oh, something is coming. Something crazy is happening.
It's about to get real.
Man, I'm so excited to see where that goes. That is
Can we get Gridnight riding on the back of Dynazenon's super like
the Dino Dragon?
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. You have an opportunity for some real groundbreaking interplay between the giant hero and mecha genres that we really have never seen before.
I would be okay with that. The thing is, like, my reactions to this is and again, I'm watching Gridman in parallel. I'm like, holy shit, they're delivering on the idea of the Gridman universe, because they brought that up, and my original theory was what they were going to do was something I thought I've seen elsewhere, where in like Tokusatsu series, where you'll have your standalone series and then they'll do like a movie where they'll bring like the two groups together, that kind of thing. But no, they're getting this in early, and I'm of two minds of this, because on the one hand, it's great to have Anti back. Like, and I think also, like, as I mentioned before, his inclusion does lend itself to developing the ideas that have been discussed thus far, like Shizumu was saying about, you know, a kaiju in this world, like, because he is a kaiju, so he'd be of interest to the eugenicists. Hell, there's even a backdoor possibility that they could control him somehow, maybe, once they figure that out. I can see a scene happening where, like, you know, they go, oh, he's a kaiju too, like, instance domination, and he has to fight Dynazenon, and then like, oh, there we go, there's a fan fight we can have, you know, that keeps the fans happy, you know, because they want to see that stuff. But then there's also the thematic stuff, so there's possibilities. Like, he's not being included in a way that he's not a character whose inclusion to me feels completely and utterly just like pointless, like they don't belong in this story, because he fits in well. But I can't help but think, like, along with my general, like, where are we going with all this, what's going on, where's the pacing of all of this, that I kind of want Dynazenon as a show to be more standalone, in the sense that I don't want it to necessarily now have Anti's arrival be the driving force of keeping the show. Like, I'm excited for it, but I want to be excited more before his arrival, if you follow my meaning, and I wasn't really getting that to some extent. Like, it should be a standalone product, Dynazenon, in my opinion. And in the ideal world, what would happen is Anti's arrival would be to people who've not seen Gridman, be the hook to make them want to check out that show. You know, where it works both ways, where if you watch Gridman, you move on to watching Dynazenon. And if you watch Dynazenon first, you go back to checking out Gridman. It's like, holy shit, because they complement each other. But I just can't help but think to myself, like, could this Dynazenon as a show not have been a little more standalone? Like, I'm glad Anti's here, but it also feels like it's revealing a little bit of the show's weakness, that it's not shoring itself up fully, or at least as fully as Gridman, the show, did, in my opinion, if you know what I mean. Maybe that's just me being pedantic and unfair, but I mean, like I said before, when we gave our opening statements, I thought Gridman is better than Dynazenon as a show thus far, just comparing the first half of each show to each other. And in an ideal world, I'd have thought that Dynazenon was on equal footing before Anti arrives in the show, because it's standing on its own 2 feet there, rather than trading in like Anti as a card to play to keep you engaged, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm fully expecting Auntie to show up as almost like an advisor character, because to me it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have, I mean, there's two reasons. Obviously, they need to tie this, the Gridman universe was literally like the subtitle of Dynazenon when they first started promoting it. Like it was on the first key visual, like it's been on all the production or all the promotional materials. So like this has always been advertised as part of the Gridman universe. And I think they needed something to finally tie that into it more than just like thematic similarities. But also, yeah, I could see him showing up as sort of an advisory character that is, I feel like we're going to get some answers now that he's here, because he is bringing an element of expertise that nobody in this show has. Yeah, like not even Galma. Galma can't even really articulate what the hell the kaiju eugenicists are up to. And Auntie is born of this weird, like, human kaiju conspiracy from the first show that never gets fully fleshed out in a way that I felt like it was explained thoroughly enough, or fully fleshed out. So I feel like now that he's here, he's going to save their ass and then, hopefully tell them what's up. And I think we could probably expect that from the next episode. And if that is the case, then there probably will be a pretty severe quickening of everything happening all at once in these last 6 or 7 episodes. However, I don't know.
I would be all right with the show picking up pace substantially.
Yeah, I think it needs to.
I'd believe so too.
Looking at these first 6 episodes, they've all been good, but they have, there's been a lot of very slow burn character moments and not really any movement on the overarching conflict between the two groups in the show.
The comparison I would make, actually, and this is relating to a video game, so maybe not the most accurate one, is probably Mass Effect 2 of all things. Because Mass Effect 2 is mostly great, like, sub-character stories, like you meet all the various members of your team, and that's all good. Missions. Yeah, all the loyalty missions, all that, fantastic. The overarching plot,
yeah, it's all right.
And the thing is, one does not have to be good at the expense of the other. Both of them can be good, if not great. And the overarching plot of Dynazenon thus far is illusory and almost like smoke and mirrors. And that's a part of its design. I get that. But
yeah.
I also think stuff like, I want more. Like, I want more to have been established by now.
I think they've also reached the very bleeding edge of being able to just have the same fight play out every week.
Yep.
And I don't want to say that as a sense of like, I don't think that they're being like creative, because obviously I love the kaiju designs and stuff, but I mean, there's a formula that they have used in literally every single fight. They fight as individual units, they combine and make the big humanoid robot, and then they change into the dinosaur, and then the fight's over. I mean, it's happened 6 weeks in a row.
5,
and it plays out. 5, I guess this last different one,
because the villains finally started doing their version of Gatai.
Yeah, they started doing their own Dynazenon, and it did not go well. So yeah, Grid Knight had to show up and lay the law down.
Man, I think
so. Yeah, it's time for a shakeup. So I'm glad that this is happening now, because it's literally right in the middle of the show. But yeah, I think we've basically exhausted the same battle every week formula. I think we need something else here.
Well, I think so. Yukonon, I think, rightly points out like that the source kind of inspirations for this show and its predecessor, like in both Mecha and Toku, like kind of rely on establishing a formula. Then, a lot
literally
of times
Monster of the Week.
And then it's good, things like transformation sequences are part of that. They're like the chorus of your favorite song. If they weren't there, it would suck, even though it's something you already know and have seen. But in this case, I mean, I think that they're establishing it and then that they're going to do something different. I mean, the end of episode 6 was already, I think, a big difference, and I think that like it's both that and Auntie's arrival sort of signal that we're moving into the next phase of this story.
Well,
because sorry, go ahead.
just to address the comments, though, my complaint is not to do with the formula whatsoever. The formula works. I'm down with it. I still get giddy seeing all the transformation sequences and all of that. My complaint is what's all in service of in the overarching plot, because the overarching plot is barely there.
Well, right. I think that too is like, what's the plot of Kamen Rider? Tell me the plot of Kamen Rider, real quick.
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. But I can.
No, I thought you were gonna. I thought you had seen a Kamen Rider.
I'd seen you said Kamen Rider specifically, but there's so many different Kamen Riders.
I meant the one that you saw.
Kamen Rider Black, ghosts chase a guy through Tokyo and turn him into a cyborg so he can fight against like some sort of I don't know, some sort of like. I've only seen one episode of it though, so I can't.
Oh, just one episode. Okay.
No, it's been airing on the Tokusatsu YouTube channel. So look, my point is, right, when I say formula is like, when I talk about formula being good, I'm totally fine with like the robot battles each week, but they have to be in service to something, to a plot, to an advance.
Right.
And I think what you can always gain,
that's what I'm trying to say.
think what you can always gain here is that the nature of these formulas is that they can be very static. Like, the villains don't change much. The villains get beaten, and then it's next week, big magic reset button is pressed, and we continue. And here's the thing. That might be part of the construction of those shows, and to an extent, Gridman and Dynazenon, or even things like Sailor Moon, for example. Because Lord knows that goes on for several dozen episodes before things take a substantive change. But I hate to say it, I don't like that element of that kind of stuff. Like, I'm willing to forgive it in stuff like Sailor Moon, for example, because at least things do shift. Like, in the first season, in the first 52 episodes or so, there's, like, different villains coming in all the time and all that, The politics of the Dark Kingdom gets shaken up. That, like, things do change. But also, conversely, I don't care for Sailor Moon Super S because that show doesn't change anything with the villains, really. Like, there are new villains coming, but it's the same old shit all the fucking time. It bores me to death. So, the fact that, like I say, we have this repeated thing happening in Dynazenon where it's the villains doing the same thing over and over again for nebulous reasons is not appealing to me. Like, I want there to be something that makes me think that the overarching, like, plot, the spine of it that runs through all of it is worth paying attention to. And I'm saying, and as I said before, like, I don't even need to know what the actual true agenda of the villains is at this point. If I have a false agenda that's been presented that is still credible and conceivable, like, again, what happened in Gridman the show, where Akane's doing her thing to murder the fucking people that she doesn't like, and then there's Alexis in the background doing his little puppeteering thing, that's still something I can latch onto as something to be engaged with, whereas the Eugenicists are doing this because...
Well, do you want me to restate what I had said earlier? Because they've hinted at reasons that you can, and they have, like, they've said stuff. I mean, there's not absolutely nothing there, but I think to speak to your point again, what I was trying to say is not necessarily just the battles, but like, again, I think if you're like being familiar with, like you said, Magical Girl or Mecha or Toku, like a lot of the time, and I haven't seen every single show, so maybe there's some that diverge from this a lot, but most of the time they establish like the world and kind of most of like the basics of the plot, like in the first episode or two, if it's a two-parter. And then a lot of time is spent giving like doing very episodic stories, character building, getting you to appreciate the cast with like, kind of similar or predictable battles playing out for a number of episodes. That, like, just because it's been done before, like, I'm not saying this is why you should like it, because that's not a good argument, but I think it is kind of, or has been somewhat like playing to type. But it's only been 5 episodes that it's done that. And I think the big problem is like, you're just, I don't know, I think to say that there's nothing there in terms of plot is like disingenuous, but I think maybe what's just there in terms of like the reason they're fighting is not like
That's the
grabbing you.
No, that's the thing, because I don't know why beyond vagaries and the thing is, you say 5 episodes, Doc, but we have to consider we're halfway through now. Like 5 episodes is just a raw number. It doesn't speak to the overall like progression of the story or the season. And I wanted to have more reason to care about why they're doing this until this point. And as I say, it doesn't even have to be the truth. Save the truth for later in the show. But give me something to latch on to beyond we're here to wreck shit. It just seems overly simplistic.
They have given you, again, I think that you're not being fair. They have given you more than we're just here to wreck shit. Like, they have talked about, like, the fact that they want to live in a world where kaiju are needed and that humans are inferior. Well, again, they'll look at what their behavior is and look at how they talk about people. Right, look at their actions. They did, rather than like pure just exposition. We can say like what they've said is like they want to live in a world where kaiju are needed. What that means to them, seemingly, is kaiju doing battle and establishing dominance over people. And again, this is like a working theory that is, it's incomplete. And to some extent, my answer to all this is like, ride the trigger wave and let them take you where they're going to take you and see where it goes. Because I think that they do have a plan. But
I'd buy the kaiju dominance thing if the wider world had some reaction to the kaiju being present, but they've been practically invisible.
I think that that's by design. I think because we talked a lot about like how it's weird that no one seems to notice or care much about what they're doing. And it like sort of you get this feeling that it's the something about the world is not quite right or authentic. And Marc and our first episode talked a lot about this computer world simulation type stuff. And maybe that'll be the payoff of it. But
is that not incompatible with the idea of kaiju exerting domination? Because if they're meant to be exerting domination, then we need to see the domination taking effect on people, and it's not.
Well, because they keep getting beat.
No, but like that. But then again, the most reaction we have to people seeing the existence of kaiju is, oh, it stopped. Like a kaiju like wrecked the train track, whatever. Again, this ties into my wider problem where I said that the consequences of the kaiju battles are buildings fall over and that's it. The very muted response to the kaiju appearing and causing this widespread destruction, including up to in episode 6 where it craters an entire block in one go. Doesn't seem to me like it fits with the fact that they want to have the kaiju exert domination, because
I think we can't judge the response to what happens in episode 6 because we haven't seen it. Like, we're still in the middle of that battle. We haven't seen the aftermath of that.
Well, episode 6 was merely one example. There have been many others prior to that point. And what's the reaction to the kaiju blowing up half the city? I don't know. And this is the thing,
it's fixed, right? I mean, it's mostly like because, like we said, like they're using these weird interdimensional weapons, and then the buildings pop back up.
No, we already said that was the one specific kaiju's power that was dispelled.
There was another kaiju. Slayed. There are 2 kaiju that have these powers because there are multiple times when Galma shoots the missiles, and the reason the missiles don't hit is because the space around them is distorted, either flattened or crunched.
That also doesn't mesh then with the scene where we see Yomogi and Minami surveying the wreck jackals. If the city was fixed,
that's a weird scene. I know. That's what that's the weirdness.
So the thing is, if there is meant to be an after effects in which the kaiju are exerting it, in which they are like people are afraid of them or anything like that, where is it?
Well, the villains have been thwarted. They've been thwarted every time.
But I mean, yes, but that doesn't mean people still aren't going to be afraid of kaiju popping up and wrecking half the city and killing people. Where is it? Where is the supposed domination meant to be coming in here? Because even if the kaiju are beaten, they still would have a lingering after effects of, oh, well, fuck, I'm terrified of getting murdered by a kaiju that might pop out somewhere. And again, Gridman did this there because there was an after effects to the kaiju. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, city gets fixed, but people are erased from history entirely, which is horrifying, So this is again, we're getting to the nitty-gritty here, but my overall point is I like the character stuff going on in the show quite a lot, but the overarching plot I don't have any idea what I'm meant to be invested in or why with it at this point. It is just talking points of what kaiju may or may not mean. I don't know. I don't get it. So Yukino says in chat, if you ignore, don't care about certain things that might as well not exist for you, same thing how your life doesn't suddenly change because people have been hit by an earthquake. The thing is, like, earthquakes, like, are something that people know about in Japan and, like, train, like, they build their lives and their buildings around it. Like, that's been a known phenomenon for a very long time. The kaiju in this show are relatively new, and they, you know, like, an earthquake is an indiscriminate force of nature that you can't really avoid. But a kaiju is like an appreciable creature running around, blowing shit up, wrecking places. It's not a valid comparison, in my opinion.
Well,
like,
this may
the
not
show
be the world
needs...
as we know it, especially since.
Well, it's definitely not.
People showed up.
Yeah, but the thing, it isn't, because of course it's the digital world. But I'm saying the show is not doing a good enough job, in my opinion, making me care about the overarching plot and what's at stake here. And it's not doing it for a number of reasons, not least of which being, I don't know why I should care about the after effects of these fights. Like, the most we get is Minami and Koyomi, like, sorry, Yomogi, like, saying, oh, look at this aftermath here. But it's pales in comparison to the existential horror of Gridman, where, oh, people are dead, and it's not good enough. So that's why I've said before, like, I don't think Dynazenon is as good a show as Gridman, comparing the episodes to this point, like, you know, 1 to 6 of each, because I feel like there's a sense of tension with the fights. I feel like there's a sense of tension with the stakes of what's happening, where people are getting erased, whereas in Dynazenon, buildings blow up and that's it, I guess. And you say, like, you know, and you're right to say that, you know, like, the muted response is by design. But if the muted response is by design, then how on earth are the eugenicists going to be able to exert dominance over people who don't give a shit? That seems contradictory to me.
It, you know, I don't know. I guess it depends on, like, if they're mistaken, or, like, they might not have correct beliefs about the world. You know what I mean? We don't know. There's a lot we don't know.
Yeah, but
Marc,
to address that point very before Marc chimes in,
I don't have anything. I don't have anything to add on this, but I do have something related to it. So.
Okay.
But before you say back, I just want one point to your point there, Doc. You're saying, like, you know, about we don't know yet. Like, that could still be something the show could have brought up at this point, where the eugenicists actively look at the situation, like, where people don't care, and be like, why don't they care? They're interlopers to this world in their own right. You know, they've just recently been revived.
That might be playing your hand too early, though, in my opinion. But
it's not playing shit thus far, really, though. Like, play something, please. Apart from Anti turning up, which it has now done. But we're halfway through. Like, I'm saying, I want more details to be doled out between the start of the show and this point where he appears, so I could, like, have something else to latch onto.
Well, I think subversion is, like, you have to have something to subvert. You have to have a milieu and a palette and an established kind of world and interactions and everything in relationships to meaningfully subvert it. And so if this is what they're going to do, you know, all this contingent on the rest of the show, but if this is what they're going to do, I mean, I think, like, that it's a good thing to have a relatively static kind of, like, big picture for the first part of your show.
Sorry, Marc, you were going to say?
My original point, honestly, was more just due to the I guess the nature and composition and like action direction of the battles that we've seen so far week to week. I honestly feel like Gridman also did this better, the Monster of the Week thing better, because I felt like there was better. I just like the kaiju designs a lot more than in Gridman than I do in Dynazenon in general. But also, I felt like the battles in Gridman had more variation and more directorial variation. It's weird because, you know, Dynazenon is a mecha show, and yet Gridman, the week to week battles had so many, like, weird references to old mecha anime from the 80s and 90s. It's kind of crazy. Like, there was, like, Dangayo references, like, direct, like, you know, shot for shot references to, like, old shows like Dangayo and stuff like that. Like, more references to, like, mecha anime than like actual, like, old tokusatsu. but also, I just felt like the way that they had set up Gridman sort of naturally lended itself to more variety, because you had, all these different weapons that he could use and abilities, and like the fact that, just his base form was enough to take out kaijus at certain points, and he's striking those Obari poses, and I really, there's been some great moments in these battles, stuff that's definitely made me like extremely excited and entertained, but there's nothing that's really quite reached the heights of like the first time that he strikes an Obari pose with that giant sword in Gridman. There's not really been anything like that in Dynazenon. I don't know if it's just that I connect more with the giant hero thing because Gridman, the original Gridman, was a giant hero thing, and the anime was like channeling that, so it seems more appropriate, or like that. I don't know if it's that, or like maybe the mecha element is a little bit less thought out because this whole thing was originally based on a tokusatsu, and that feels like almost incongruous with that type of stuff. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that any of them are bad. I just feel like at this point they do feel more actively repetitive and formulaic than the stuff that we saw in Gridman, only because I feel like Gridman was given more room for variation than with Dynazenon, because Dynazenon has essentially 3 stages to every battle, like I said earlier. And that's just, that's the nature of mecha versus giant hero. And Gridman is an exceedingly unique giant hero because it combines elements of both giant hero and mecha into one sort of thing. Like, there's not really a whole lot of giant hero shows out there that also feature like giant robot parts getting like bolted onto the hero and like allowing him to like shoot missile launchers and stuff like that. It's very different than, Ultraman or anything like that. So, which I guess really is the only other giant hero show we can compare this to. And then I think about
certainly
it,
the only one I know
the
about.
Market they kind of have the market cornered on the giant hero genre. It's a lot, some would say. I certainly would not be brave enough to put up like, I don't think any other company at this point in 2021 is like brave enough to be like, what we should do? We should do a giant hero show. It's like, no, I don't think we should.
Can't sell that shit.
That seems like a bad idea.
Let's corner the off-brand Ultraman market.
Yeah. But my honestly, the thing that I'm most excited about now is these weird interactions between 2 genres that rarely, if ever, exist not only within the same like action tokusatsu genre, but like even in the same like media of production, because usually mecha is reserved for anime, with the exception of Sentai shows.
Right.
Those always have a big ass robot on him. Giant Hero is with the exception of these 2 shows, almost exclusively a tokusatsu thing. So it'll be very interesting to see how they use that. And I'm sure they will use it because it's Trigger, and we were just saying, they love messing with tropes. And they love messing with the strictures of the genre. So I'm excited to see how they handle that now that things have been shaken up a bit.
Man, just seeing Grid Knight's back, it was so fucking cool.
It was really cool, man.
Because
it looks really cool.
Because even he doesn't look like any other like thing in the show, like just the giant muscular humanoid. Everything else is,
well, that
robotic.
And he's got a very different color scheme than just about anybody else in the show. That really cool, like purple and gray, very, a very anti-hero.
Woo!
Okay,
they didn't name him Anti for no reason. Yeah. It's very clear. But and also like it's weird because part of me always wondered when they named him Anti. Anti is actually a pretty common word in the Japanese internet lexicon that started to
your mom's sister.
Exactly. Yeah. AUNTY. Yeah. But no, it started to enter the English internet lexicon through VTubers, actually, because that was the first time I ever heard it used with any sort of regularity. But yeah, it's just like, their word for like an internet, like a troll or somebody who like actively tries to like undermine a movement, or like a particular type of like internet phenomenon. And Anti definitely has always struck me as that type of like that that character manifest, just like a very not necessarily now, because obviously he like grew and matured during the show and became a secondary hero as opposed to a villain as he was initially presented. But when he was initially presented, he was literally like a bratty villainous child, which is to me like the the allegory of the cave version of the internet auntie, who like harasses women online or something or whatever the hell they
no actual reason for real substantial reason for doing it, just because.
Well, there is one substantial reason in the VTuber community, and that is mentioning anything negative about China. That's a very popular reason for doing it. But again, no real reason or no valid reason.
Yes, exactly. Right, chaps. Do we have any more talking points?
Yes. I just want to talk about for a moment my man Yomogi's mask etiquette and how ass backwards it is. Because dude has a cold. He knows he got a cold, feeling bad. He's going to spread it. What does he do? Outdoors on the way to school, masked up. Totally good. When he gets in his classroom, mask down, baby, chin strap. What are you doing?
In his room with Minami, like sitting within 3 feet of her.
What are you doing?
The mask is off, like on his chin, like a Trump supporter. And and he gets her sick. The asshole.
Yeah. Jerk. I wonder if that was like meant to be the point. Like, look at this like doofus. He got his girlfriend sick because he wants to be cool and wear his mask on his chin. But
if you
what the
date
fuck,
somebody,
dude?
A really good way to make sure that never happens is to get them sick because you're an idiot.
Bingo.
Oh,
failure. What a abject failure at mask wearing.
It's fine. She took the Dino Wings to the local pharmacy and got a pickup the same day. It was fine.
Yeah. She drove the Dino Wing through a Walgreens pharmacy drive-through. There's an idea for you, Trigger.
She got some bleach.
Drive-through pharmacy in the Dino Wing.
She injected bleach and sunlight. She's fine now.
Oh no.
She has to stick her like spectral head out of one of the wings because that's as close as she could get to the drive-through and like grab it and bring it to the outside.
Like the person just is holding the bag out the window. Don't know, and then the hand just pops down, grabs it, and it's like whatever. I don't care.
Now, the more that I think about it, the more that I realize that the Dino Wing is really the only part of Dynazenon that's actually feasible as like a transportation vehicle, because it's the only thing that doesn't just like crush everything underfoot. Because even the Dino Striker is the size of like
it's huge.
One of those big like military hovercraft.
It's like a blimp sized.
Yeah.
It can make its own road, though, which I think would be hilarious if you were just there, like, caught in traffic and you saw it just going overhead on its own projected road.
The Dino Striker has the same ground footprint as one of those, like, giant dump trucks that they used to haul, like, mining slate out of, like, huge strip mines. The ones that are, like, 100 feet tall and, like, you have to have, like, a special training to drive. Like, it has the same ground footprint as, like, one of those.
Yep.
So it is not... But it also can spawn, like, a weird, like, laser... loop-to-loop Hot Wheels track wherever it goes. So maybe it is actually feasible. But Minami definitely has the long end of the stick in that scenario because the Dino Striker really is just a wonderful vehicle all the way around.
Yes.
Or the Dino Wing.
The wings,
right. She's a shockingly good pilot with it, by the way. There's that
she's a great pilot
that shoots the homing laser at her, and she's just like...
She evades a Itano circus of lasers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's a good pilot. I mean, that's maybe the most empathetic point I have for her is that she's really good at flying. Which
you're not a fan? Respect. You're not a fan of the character?
No, I like her, but there's a lot there to like. But for me, because I'm a freak, the thing I like the most somehow out of all of the things to like is
piloting.
The fact that she is a very good pilot. She's a natural pilot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense. You know, she's been avoiding pain for so long. It's only fair that would see through in a flying. See how this all ties together.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. There we go. I've got
mission accomplished.
I've got the deep reads here. The deep.
It's
reads.
good though. I mean, you say it, but like I really like that. Like you know, even though as we've gotten to know her, and you feel like you have in up to this point, you got to know her better, but she still feels very like, you know, inwardly focused. Like there's a interior life there going on, and you know, like she's not like I sort of like that she's not like 100% clear and upfront about why she's pissed at Yomogi. Like I like that she has a real petty reason to be annoyed with him, because like it's that whole almost kind of a Shinji Ikari thing in some ways, where like you want people to pay attention to you, but when they try to pay attention to you, you push them away because that's just sort of your personality. But when they take the hint and leave you alone, you're annoyed also because you're stuck in a bad cycle. There's a little bit of that going on with her, which I like. And I really want her to find some closure and peace regarding her sister's mystery. I've really warmed up to Koyomi. I mean, I want that dude to like, you know, fucking make something of his life and like at the end of this, like, you know, clean up his apartment, get a haircut,
go to a damn therapist.
go to a therapist. Like
He's gonna be a race car
They never
driver.
actually do that in an anime.
no, that
but
never happened.
but like
Impossible.
man, that would be
Impossible.
great.
That would rip. Like get him in therapy, maybe get him like working a really low stakes part-time job.
You know, honestly, these Trigger guys, they watch a lot of Western movies, a lot of which are made in LA, and LA has that whole, you know, obsession with portraying therapy. So, you know, if anybody would be the first to put therapy in a show, it's either Trigger or Kyoani for entirely different reasons.
Right. Oh yeah, no, that's a very different.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like with Trigger doing that, it would be more like they turn into a form of martial art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or well, they would do it, but they would probably completely misinterpret the actual reason for
Oh
therapy.
gosh, yeah.
Whereas Kyoani would do it because they're actual empathetic people that like strive. Not that I'm saying that Trigger isn't, but that's
Yeah.
they use that to Kyoani uses that to make their anime.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned something, and that's probably I'm going to seize control and get one of my talking points out here really quickly. Where you're talking about empathy here, Mark, which is I brought up One Drag Priority before as a direct comparison to this show because it is, of course, dealing with broadly similar plot line of here's a character who has a friend, or rather someone who's close to them in this case. In One Drag, it was, of course, Koiso, who was a close friend of I. In this show, it is, of course, Minami's sister, whose name unfortunately eludes me at the moment. But regardless, who is now passed away. It is currently presumed to be suicide. It could change. I would actually potentially believe it might be murder by Inmoto, but we'll find out. But regardless, what is key here, as far as comparisons go, is piecing together the narrative behind your friend or loved one's death. And obviously, Minami and both I tried to do that. I with Koito, Minami with her sister. And one thing that I find really interesting that Dynazenon doesn't, that One Drag doesn't, and this is because One Drag wasn't going to do this, because that wasn't the purpose of the story, but this just goes to show how you can explore like the death of a loved one in interesting and different ways, is that she is trying to piece together her sister's history partly through like secondhand accounts from friends, but also through social media, which I find really, really interesting. Because social media, I would argue, is often how we choose to present ourselves to a wider audience. Like, we cultivate an image of ourselves. We cultivate a narrative of ourselves that we put out there. There are things that I know that are personal to my life that I do not share with everyone on social media. And that is either because they're just simply mundane and boring nonsense, or because they're deeply private.
Yes.
You know, no one has
You're
no
a
one has a
functioning human.
well, no, I wouldn't say that, but anyway. But the point is, like, our time on social media and how we present ourselves, like how we cultivate ourselves here, is very deliberate, whether we realize it or not. And for some people, they do openly talk about like the experiences they're going through, like pain, like emotional trauma. There are people out there who I know who talk openly about suicidal ideation and all that. And for them, they feel it's acceptable. And this is not me judging them for saying that they shouldn't be doing this, but for them, they feel it's acceptable to talk about. But regardless, there is a certain degree of like cultivation of image on social media. And this I find really interesting, that the show is presenting Minami's sister in such a way where we see these various videos where they can't even interpret, that being, of course, Minami and by extension, Komi. Like, is this bullying? Is this like hurtful to her? Like, these are things that were kept unlisted. Some of this was private, some of this was public, and all that. And I find this whole idea of trying to piece together this narrative from like incomplete and cultivated information really, really intriguing. I'm ultimately curious what they do with it. It's a very different approach, I'd say, from Wonder Egg, but that's fine. Like the Wonder Egg had its intended purpose with Koito as a character, and similarly, Dynazenon has with Minami's sister. And I like the fact that it's exploring this angle we didn't see there, and I'm curious what they do with it. But I think that it's really interesting that it addresses that this image, that like these facts that we get about these videos we see are by their very nature constructed and fabricated for like to present a narrative of her as a person. What was she like otherwise? Can you ever find out the truth of that, really, given that there's only so much information out there in the public domain, like of these videos or what people knew of her? Like, is that ultimately going to be the point that Minami gets to? Like, I can't have a complete narrative of what happened to my sister. I never will, and I will have to live with that fact. And that is what ultimately causes the metaphorical ankh link that she has to break. There is interesting stuff going on here, and I'm so far quite impressed with it. I'm glad that Trigger's doing it from this particular angle, because it's not something I've seen explored. I think sometimes like shows tend to treat like the use of social media as something we acknowledge that exists, but not something we necessarily delve into all that much. I think Odd Taxi has been doing this, which I haven't seen. But nonetheless, Dynazenon has this angle to it, and I'm glad it's doing it.
Emily Rand favorite Gatchaman crowds is big on the using social media to do a thing. And Durarara also to an extent as well. But God, that was so long ago that like social media was so
like
different.
Messenger.
Yeah.
Was there a MySpace Tom on that show?
It is like basically them just
it's
straight
from that
up
vintage
off like I am
or
like whatever the Japanese.
There's some of the very like basic like chat deal, but
yeah.
But it was still significant, and Gatchaman.
Oh yeah, it was a huge element in that show. Gatchaman too, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, I mean, I guess by the second season, social media had really come into its own. But the first season, I guess it was like 2013-ish. So anyway,
they were like
matter.
Straight up like making like political votes through social media in that show, which I always thought was a really interesting concept. I mean, it wasn't really through social media. It was just like they were able to like vote for like prime minister or whatever on their phone, which I always thought was really crazy.
Yes.
And also like great.
Finger slips.
If anybody could actually make that work, it would be the greatest thing to ever happen.
Well, I mean, at the rate everything's getting hacked, it's just
that's
so
what
risky.
I'm saying is like
right, yeah.
Actually work. Part of that is like not being fucked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Shoot. I had something else I was gonna say, but now it's left in my mind. I think that was all really well put, Shadon, and that is a really interesting point of comparison. I mean, I love like, Wonder Egg like threw us into like the bleeding heart of the pain. Like the trauma was like just visualized right there before us, and like your abuser was coming at you with a knife or with a ribbons under whatever sort of kind of metaphorically stood for like the thing that they like abuse you with. Like, whereas this is so removed from all that and investigative and is about like the in addition to like the even more than the victim is about like the survivor and kind of like how do we deal with it as survivors and like what do we do and how do we kind of make peace with it all? Can we ever really know what happened? I mean that's
the only unbelievable thing to me in this entire thing of Minami trying to find more about her sister is that there's like actual video evidence of her being bullied that's like still around. Because in any real world scenario,
right.
That would be long
deleted.
Gone if it ever did exist. Yeah.
Maybe they don't think it's bullying.
It's like privated.
Maybe
no, they clearly don't. Well, I don't know. But there's an argument to be there's an argument to be made that they probably realized that it was once she was dead, which is why all of this is being hidden. And also the fact that you see a difference between what the first girl tells her and what the last dude tells her, where the first girl is like, oh yeah, there's some videos, we'll send them to you. And they're all just like completely innocent and are just meant to characterize her sister. Whereas like the last dude is like, yeah, there's probably some, there's these privated videos that we have that, that pretty clearly show her being bullied.
And one of the people is the first lady she interviewed. One of the people in the vicinity.
Well, it's no wonder why the first girl didn't tell her about those videos, is because she's the like perpetrator. Yep. She's like one of the people that was bullying her. And I know like in episode 6, like part of the conflict between Yomogi and Minami is her saying like, she's like, well, I don't know. Like, was it a prank or was it bullying? But like us looking at this from an outsider's perspective, like that, it was fully bullying what they showed. Like clearly she was not comfortable. She was not happy that it was happening. Like she was not a party to like the joke that was being played against her.
Yeah. It's almost like hazing, like some kind of weird initiation ritual that they did to
and it's people regularly. What they did would have constituted probably light bullying. But the thing that fully solidified it for me was that they like filmed the entire thing.
Oh yeah, it's totally unacceptable
without her consent, and then like edited into like a silly like
the music and shit. So heartless
game show style video.
Yeah,
and then uploaded it for other people to see. It clearly for some time. Yeah, no, it's fully
the Nico style messages like going across. Like it was so uncomfortable, and it's absolutely bullying. Just like it seems like so like it's like institutionalized, like it's a part of that like group, and it's like at the time
and you could tell that it was like the type of thing that this was not the first time that this had happened.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like
you could see it on her face that she was just like, oh my god, like here we go again. Like I have to play along with this because I'm on camera.
Yeah.
But
it sucks super bad, and it is hard to see. Like even more so
real.
Because of the like kind of editing of it all,
that definitely made it worse.
God,
people's capacity for just like a complete lack of empathy outside of their own station.
Yeah,
on full display.
Child cruelty, as in cruelty by kids to other kids, basically.
Yeah.
Right. I have another point to bring up, which I'll keep brief here.
Do it.
Which is this. I mentioned in the previous podcast we did on Dynazenon that I think it's a really good thing for the show's story that the Dynazenon robot is a Gestalt robot, and that we actually do have it established early, all the various component parts of it. I mean, you were talking before, Mark, about how Gridman like escalated and had like new like weapons and such come in as the Gridman Alliance like started turning up and started getting involved, and that is to Gridman's strength, absolutely. And that is something I do think Dynazenon does lack in terms of its fight variety, because it is like it feels like it's played all its fight cards already. But the Gestalt element, or the of the combining robot, does work for me as a character element, and the reason for that I think is in part because, to go back again to Mujina's like stealing of the Dyna Striker, what I think is really interesting here is that happens, but they get it back and they still lose. And I think that's a really, really concrete way of showing that the actual power that they have is, again, the power of friendship, as Marc said, which is true. Like, that's why they have that whole moment where, they don't say the combining sequence in time with each other. Like when they say like Super Dragon Dynazenon, where everyone's like, they say it out of sync. Which reminded me of all things of Wonderful 101, where that's actually an element of, the team like yelling, unite up. They don't say it like the Roger in sequence properly until the end of the game when the team is truly united. And then in turn, the Kaiju Eugenicists actually win by combining and working together. Mm-hmm. The two of them are more superior than the one. Like they managed to control the Kaiju and then actually managed to beat Dynazenon. And I can see it as crystal clear as possible in the future that what will happen is we'll have like the final battle between them, at least, whether it's the final battle of the show is a different matter, where all four of them are controlling a kaiju at the same time. Versus our team, who are properly unites at that point. That'll be the big like battle of wills, and I really like that. I think it's again a great example of how you use the robots and the kaiju as extensions of the characters' wills and conflicts, and how you demonstrate that while the robots themselves are cool and all that, they are literally no substitute for the actual like emotional conflict going on here. I mean, fight scenes for me can be awesome in two ways. They can be awesome visually, where you've got stuff like, say, One Punch Man. Like, I can talk about the One Punch Man versus Boris fight all I want, but part of that's only part of that story as far as that fight is concerned, because the other bit is also how in reality it's still completely utterly one-sided, and that ties into Saitama's like existential crisis. And for me, like, fight scenes work best when they have an emotional core to them, and I like that Dynazenon has actually made that a part of the way the world works and the way the mechanics of the show work, in that it's not simply that Dynazenon like has the best firepower and all that, it's got to have the best kind of pilots to be and the best kind of like teamwork and emotional like stability and connection. So I like that the show plays with that by saying, okay, Dyna Striker's gone. And in a lesser writer's hands, we'd have had a fight where they'd have fought without Dyna Striker and then lost because they didn't have Dyna Striker, but rather they get it back and they lose because of what's going on in their own personal lives, how it's affecting them as people. That's the more interesting, dramatic like storyline, and I'm so happy that they did that, because it goes to show that even though we said like we want to sell merch with this show and all that stuff, there is still substance to it. Like, for all that the robot is cool, the robot is just one part of it. The robot isn't what's solely winning the fights.
Yeah, I think that's part of what has made the fights go down so well for me. Is like, because I don't think that, like, visually they're fun, but I don't think that they're spectacular. But like the kind of how all the B plots are feeding into the fight, I like gives them that extra oomph and does make me care. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it before, but it just occurred to me how, like, I don't know, I feel like rather than a straight line, like the story kind of structure is like a spiral, and we're starting to get nearer to like the core of it. And we have been, we've got big picture stuff established and we've been circling the outside, but I think that we're, I think that we are getting there. And not only are we getting there, but I think, I believe, like, this might be a little strong. I think in an ideal world, when we are there at the core, we will realize that this was the best way of getting there. That if it had been, more kind of straightforward and revealed certain things to us at different times, that it might have that it just wouldn't have been the same. That is what I'm hopeful for of the show. But I don't have any more talking points myself. I'm all out.
Anything else from you, Marc?
Good.
I have a couple of small little things I want to mention. One of which is there is identical framing when Minami is like burying her head in her backpack at the desk between her and Akane in Gridman. Like, it's the exact same shot of like against the giant window. Yeah. So again, they're pulling on the parallels. They're constantly doing that. The other thing I wanted to mention as well is just to reiterate that scene between Yomogi and Imoso and her husband. There's so much that's just like jarring. Like, if physically made, like, just the way it's edited and the way it all feels like this, the show is stuttering.
Yep.
Like, really made me feel like uncomfortable in an intended way. And also, I really like the line that her husband delivers. He says, like, this is a really small table for free. It's just such a perfect encapsulation of, like, someone does not belong here, but he's been put in this position he should not be in, and it's not right. But also, the final thing I'll mention as well is, you mentioned also, Marc, about the umbrellas forming the heart that then, of course, like, splits apart. What does Koyomi use to shatter the glass, like, when he's enraged? His broken heart, his umbrella.
Right.
The half of it that's shattered. It all gels together. It's actually quite good. I quite like it. But that's it. I'm done. I'm out of talking points.
Okay.
I hope that Auntie shows up and says, "Where the fuck's Gridman?" and leaves, and then it's funny, and then that's it.
Gridman just once again reminds me of my eternal question: how the hell do writers just keep track of all this shit that they want to like connect to everything? Because I can barely write a cohesive story with like absolutely no allegory. But this is just
Black
like
magic.
so many like interlinking parts in here. I'm just like, man, do you have like they must have one of those like charts
Yeah.
where it's just like a bunch of piece of paper taped to the wall and everything's tied together with red strings.
A
Like
giant corkboard, yes, for sure.
Situation.
Okay, so it's time to rate and review episodes 4 through 6 of SSSS Dynazenon. Let's change things up. I'll go first, and then Marc, and then Shadon.
Oh boy.
So, like, I'll start off by saying that as much as I will go to bat for the show so far in terms of a lot of its aspects, I do think that it is missing something so far from like that's keeping it from being like a great mecha show. Whether it's like signature fights or I don't know, something to do with a character moment or just something like that. There's, you know, that I like what's going on, particularly in these 3 episodes, but it is not. It, you know, if it ended tomorrow, I'd be like, well, this was a good robot show, but it's not one that I'm gonna like remember as like a great one that mecha fans need to hold on to for years to come or anything like that. I loved the comedy. I loved getting to know these characters more. I love what's going on in their lives, and you just seeing that, whether it's like the ones that I am rooting for or the ones I'm rooting against. I think that they're all coming along mostly pretty well. What's her name? Mujina in particular. I was really surprised that they gave her as much time to shine as they did. I mean, you know, she went from being like, I'll do whatever you guys want. You know, I'll do whatever you guys decide, to like grabbing the reins and being like, you know what? We're going to do this differently. Domination, I'm here with you. Like, now let's combine and wreck shit together, Mr. Wreck Shit Man. Which was cool. And she's like clearly rattled by Koyomi in a way. He's under her skin, and that's fun. You know, I think the battles, I don't know, maybe I'm more of a child inside than other people, but like I could watch like Dynazenon transform, or like them combine into Dynazenon and then turn into the Rex, you know, Dynarex dragon, and like punch shit for the win. Like I could watch that every week and be content. Like I get a kick out of that. You know, but I'm looking forward to them subverting it. I think it will be interesting if they do. But it's not like it's not like I haven't like tired of any of the elements particularly just yet. So, but I haven't been watching it week to week. Like I'll watch it in bursts. Like I watched 1 through 3, 3 weeks ago, and I watched 4 through 6 today. So that could be the difference there. But I'm hopeful about where it's going. Love the reveal at the end of 6. I think all told, especially for the pool sequences, I'm going to give this 4 overprotective lifeguards out of 5.
Fair enough. Marc?
I don't really have a whole lot to say more than I've already said. Honestly, I kind of want to split this review because I feel like episodes 4 and 5 I'd probably give like a 3 out of 5, and episode 6 I'd probably give closer to 4 out of 5, because I feel like episode 6 there's just like so much going on compared to episode 4 and 5, which are very plotting, I think, and do not have a whole lot of new developments other than this, revelation that Minami's sister might have actually killed herself and not died in a accident. Which I also want to say that for some reason, to me, it was never particularly clear that that was a reveal. I kind of had always just assumed that she had killed herself. So that was kind of a surprise to me that it was a surprise to them, because I thought that was always just kind of the running assumption, but I guess not. That's besides the point. I'll just say 3.5 out of 5 pieces of a robot.
There we go.
There you go.
Right. So to summarize for me, I think that shows and fiction, generally speaking, operate on what they both are delivering in the moment, but also what they promise of the future. Because of course, if you've got no promise of what comes next, then why do you want to? You're done. Who cares? You know, unless you're like literally at the end of the story, you don't give a shit. You know, like I. And conversely, of course, they've got to be delivering in the moment. They can't continuously just operate too much on. Stay tuned, and you'll find out next time what this actually means and all that. And to no one's surprise, my problem with Dynazenon is it's not balanced in an appropriate way. I think it leans too much on the promise of what comes next, at least in terms of the episodes thus far, versus what it is actually delivering on. But only slightly. Only slightly. It's certainly not, say, a full-blown Lost or something like that, which is all promise and no delivery, for the most part. But oh no, Doc's wagging his finger there because he doesn't agree.
Lost is good.
I
said it.
Look. I freely admit I did not watch Lost in full for the simple fact that it leaned personally for me too much in that promise needle direction, where I was just like, I'm done. Give me shit to latch onto. And the thing is with Dynazenon, like Dynazenon is delivering in places. I think the character stuff works really well. I'm really intrigued what they do with Koyomi and Minami. I think that it's juggling these all really well. It's hilarious in a good way. That is certainly worth knowing. I still get giddy. I still get that big kid feeling when I watch the robot fights. They're still good. But it leans too much on, see, we're promising to reveal more later thing rather than delivering the revelations like at a steady pace. And okay, maybe that's by design. Maybe it wants to be slow burn and all that. And that speaks strictly just to my preferences. That does not make it objectively bad, of course. But yeah, that's my issue of it. It's too much promise, not enough delivery or rather two leans in one direction rather than the other. But all in all, how I feel about these episodes, I am ultimately going to give them 3.5 like never-ending anime churros out of 5. Because the it's still good. It's just I wish more was happening with the overall plot at this point, and I wish we knew more. Even if that what we knew isn't strictly speaking true in the long term, like things get upended. Like I wish we knew something other than we're going to change the world with kaiju for reasons somehow, maybe, kind of. Yeah. Anyway, our compare is back. Oh, there he is. I was about to say he's disappeared, but he's just returned. Doc's back. Doc's back. Doc's back. Doc's back. Doc's back. Doc's back.
That's
Doc's
right.
back.
Yes. What did I miss?
No, I just gave my rating.
What was your
3.5.
Oh, nice.
3.5 never-ending anime churros out of 5.
Very good. Yukinon respects your opinion but disagrees. I'm not sure which way he disagrees, if it's higher or lower. But he'll let us know in Discord. And we respect your opinion, Yukinon. And I'll be curious to see what you think of it. And what you all think of it out there. Let us know in the comments to this video or on Twitter at Warui Deshou. On Discord, if you're a patron, let us know what you think of Gridman and then what you think of our takes on Gridman. But that sounds like we're going to sign off. We have one more segment that we had planned to do. Shadon, do you think we've run too long? I know that it's very late where you are. Would you like to skip Hall of Fame for this week?
Yeah, we can skip it because I can always bank it for later, and I'll have more time to fully flesh out my thoughts on it. But yeah, I'm just very fond of Castles in the Sky. That's my hint for next time.
It's not a hint. That's
no, I could be referring to a song. Could be referring to a song here, Doc. There is a Castles in the Sky song, you know. Club anthem. Worth it for that pained expression.
It's time for this to end.
Yeah.
It's worth it for that pained expression that Doc just went through then, where he looked like he literally just had like a massive migraine.
Yeah. We've kept our very patient and knowledgeable guest too long. Although we would have him on for hours and hours if he would will it. Mr. Marc, could you let the fine people know how they can access your stuff and plug anything you've got going on over at Ono Anime?
Yes. The website is back up, so it's just onoanime.moe or onoanime.com. And that will just bring you to the front page, which has every single link that you could possibly possibly want. And I'm officially working on a new video. It has been literally years.
Woo!
But
Hooray!
I've hinted at it on Twitter before, but the meteoric rise of VTubers is necessitating that I revisit that subject significantly, because our old VTuber video, which I think is the last video, it's like Patrick's like last hurrah video before he left, that one is now woefully out of date to the point where it's describing a thing that is almost unrecognizable now. So
may I suggest, Marc, that if you want to open that video anyway, if you want to have a cold open for it, just please, for love of God, use the Corona bomb diffusing gag. Thank you, I am Die.
Yes, I am Die. Thank you forever. Now I'm gonna trust me. I am gonna have more material to sift through for that video than I maybe have ever had for anything anime related ever.
Boy,
as
hours and hours, dozens and dozens of different VTubers. It's gonna be a nightmare, but I'm excited.
As the old man of the group, like, I'm particularly looking forward to your video so I can know what the fuck is going on, because this is a phenomenon that
these days of their VTubers.
No, I don't have my arms around it in any way, shape, or form.
The pandemic has allowed a complete transformation of like becoming a virtual YouTuber, to the point where like the kind of stuff that some people are doing is so bleeding edge that it like beggars belief. Like, like essentially like full home motion capture rigs that are like combining like different aspects of like motion capture technology, and like also like to do at least like facial mocap now, you just need a webcam. Like technology has gotten that good to where like you can just actively in real time map your face and like upper body movements to a live 2D or 3D model and have it, look natural and believable, as long as, the person that's rigging your stuff knows what they're doing. So I will be going into that a lot more than we did last time, because I actually think the only thing we really talked about was face rig. Last time, and it's gotten a lot more than that from here. So
wow,
yeah, it's going to be probably another 30-minute adventure. So I'm excited, daunted, because this is my first video since I want to say like the end of 2019. So
I'm sure you'll smash it.
Oh yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, it'll be a great.
Triumphant return.
Look out for that at wherever Ono Anime goods are sold or viewed for free. Mr. Shadon, the Brit closest to my heart, where and how can people get a hold of you online if they so desire?
Well, you're just going to have to travel to the virtual world I live in and avoid the local kaiju attack. Might be a bit difficult. Maybe to turn yourself into some sort of grid person thingy. I don't know. But I think if you want a more conventional method of contacting me, you can find me on Twitter at Shadon1010. That may very well be easier. Probably more harmful, though, because it's Twitter, unfortunately. But what can you do? What can you do?
If you'd like to contact me and talk about Gridman, first you'll have to go through my agent, Jugless Juggler. He moderates all the comments for all my social media. So if you can get your comments by him, at the Subtle Doctor is where you can find me on the Twitter machine. And this has really made me want to go home and watch some Ultraman. I'm still working through Ultraman. Rube is how they pronounce it in the show, but it's spelled R/B. It's not spelled like, I don't know, an uncultured person, like you Rube. No, it's R/B. Yeah, it's weird. When I first acquired it, I was like, how are they going to pronounce this? Is it just going to be, Ultraman Arubiyu? But no, they say Rube. So it's, that's that.
Very flattering name for a show.
I know, yes.
Once again, from Japan, the masters of naming.
Yes. Well, it's like red and blue, so R/B. But I don't. Yeah.
Honestly, I've gotten to the point now where like I am old enough within this scene to start like actively like just not watching shows based on them having like a ridiculous name. Like I got close with One Drag Priority because that is one of the stupidest names I've ever.
It's a crazy name. I love it so much.
I mean, it's like, it's good if the show is good, but man, there's so many bad ones. Like,
you're like the first person.
I don't know if it's like a lack of freedom with like people like licensors, because a lot of these shows have names that are literally like they're translated from the Japanese, but it's like even when translated from the Japanese, the names are like either like completely not understandable or like legitimately grammatically incorrect.
Please never stop, Japan. Like you're like the first person I've talked to, honestly, that is as deep in the community that is like just actually. I feel like everyone no-sells how weird all these names are. They act like they're living in Dynazenon and comedy is happening around them, and they're just like. But like seriously, when you first see that a show is called Farewell, My Friend Kramer or Wonder Egg Priority, it's like, how can you not go, this is so goddamn stupid. It's great.
Yeah. It rules. Yeah. Well, and it again goes unfortunately back to the VTuber community because there is unfortunately you just have to search through a lot of bad English in that community, and it's not like it's not like charming bad English from Japanese VTubers who are like earnestly trying to learn the language.
Mm-hmm.
It's like from people who are saying like presenting themselves as like trusted like translators who clearly can speak Japanese a hell of a lot better than they can speak English. And so it's and this is me not shitting on somebody who English is their second language. Like obviously anybody who has to learn English as their second language is braver than I will ever be in my entire life.
Everyone.
This language is terrible. But like, yeah, there's a difference between like somebody who's like doing it for entertainment on a stream and somebody who's like actively trying to like, preserve the content and feel of somebody's like words in a video. Like, I don't know. Maybe I hold people to a higher standard. I don't know.
Vivi Blue Right Eyes. Thank you for bringing this up.
Good
you cannot,
Lord.
because that's such a mouthful.
Awful.
You've made up words.
Awful name. Terrible.
Oh my God.
What are fluorite eye? Is fluorite even a thing? I know fluoride.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a dental show?
Yes.
I don't know.
It is. And then of course you have like the other end where it's just 86.
Yeah, that's great.
It's incredibly like just.
It's hard to Google, but at least you understand what it is.
I guess you do. It's so short.
Definitely a safe search up. That's for sure.
It's about
Google is
the old Italian mob killing
gem.
people. 86.
Google's telling me fluorite is indeed calcium fluoride, which is a type of gem. So shocking. It's a gem. Another thing that I'm always surprised when it shows up in every single anime ever made.
The Landless sequel that you didn't know existed.
Gems, Norse mythology,
Tarot cards.
philosophers, Ancient Egypt.
All the hits.
Yeah, all the great hits that they always love to put in there for
Mm.
no reason.
Well,
Anyways, enough of me being a bitter. Once I turned 30 in December, all bets were off.
man.
It was all over for me.
Oh, I'm so old. You're not even 30 years old yet, man. Oh,
I am 30. I just
Oh,
turned
once
30.
you turned 30. I
I'm-
see. Okay.
I'm 6 months into 30,
Okay.
basically.
Welcome.
And
Welcome
I
to
can just feel the cynicism
Yes.
boiling inside me.
I
No
remember when
longer will I
Shadon crossed
tolerate-
over. It was a good time.
No longer will I tolerate these goddamn names.
Yes. Oh man, I'm approaching the other big one. I turned 38 in January. So
Ooh.
yeah.
You're-
Ancient. I've long
But
passed
you're
the
a dad.
otaku expiration
You're
date.
allowed. You're a dad. You're allowed to be old. So,
Fair.
anyways,
I'll take that. Anyways, thank you everybody for joining us, for coming to hang out on Warui Deshou. Shadon, thank you very much for your wit and analysis as always. Marc, thank you so much for bringing your knowledge and just charming demeanor to the pod. It always upgrades us for sure.
It's always a pleasure, boys. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
having me on.
So that was Marc from Ono Anime. To your left, Shadon from Warui Deshou. I am the Subtle Doctor. Until next time, embrace each other, everyone, to the ends of the universe.
Good night.
Bring back the brothers.